Welcome to Infinite Novel. Dive into epic alternate realities. All rights to original creators.
Chapter 57, ch 57, seeing all Hinata Hyuga felt like shit. She was excited to go outside of the village on a mission. And heavens, she had no idea how her teacher had managed to persuade her father to allow her to go. Even the looming fact that she would need to end the lives of bandits only slightly dampened her excitement. That was a week ago. Spending time in the wilderness was pure torture. And Ren enjoyed their suffering immensely. Hinata took the challenges quietly, but Ino? The bimbo just made everything worse by adding loud complaining to the list of irritating things to deal with. Worse yet, Ren deliberately made them avoid every town or village where they could get a proper, good hotel room with amenities and a freaking working toilet. He was fully set on showing them how to survive in the wilderness because that was apparently going to be a big part of their missions in the future. Hinata never thought that out of all things she would miss the toilet the most. At least, catching some animals was not very hard with their training in her eyes. Ren also taught them a bit about makeshift bonfire cooking fit for this kind of situation, and it was desperately needed. Well, he did so after letting them eat badly cooked, bland meat for 2 days while watching them with heavy amusement as they forced it down their throats because they would need the energy. Hinata hated her teacher for it just a little bit, especially when she remembered how he confiscated everything from their personal storage seals before their trip. Ino called it a total dick move, and after the week she had just experienced, Hinata had to agree. It was not cool. But after 2 days of badly cooked meals, Ren decided to take pity on them and showed them where to find herbs they could use as seasoning. And Hinata eagerly learned every bit of knowledge he shared with her. She got a newfound appreciation for her eyes. With Byakugan, finding edible mushrooms, herbs, and wild berries was very easy. Yet, the first 2 days she had not even considered doing it. And that made her see the whole trip in a new light. The purpose of this outing was for them to get experience, to learn new things. Having Byakugan was useless without proper knowledge. You can see all you want, but if you don't know what to look out for, it will not help you at all. So, no matter how much she hated camping in the wilderness, shitting in bushes, hunting for food, and having her sleep time cut in half because of course, she was on watch duty during half of the night while Ino took the other shift, Hinata quietly took it all, only complaining and cursing in her mind. On the third day, she noticed that her teacher was still in pristine condition while both she and Ino had ruffled clothing, were visibly tired with bags under their eyes, and didn't smell particularly well. Observing him with her Byakugan and trying to see his secret, Hinata noticed that Ren had some seals she had never seen on his body. Seals that vanished the waste and piss directly from his insides. Hinata remembered she felt something explode in her head as she turned on her heel and smashed an overpowered gentle fist strike into a nearby tree trunk, causing the entire tree to topple over because of how pissed she was right there and then. She understood. She really did. The bad stuff was a part of the experience. But Sage, damn it. That was the first time she considered using her medical ninjutsu to resolve her problems. Every book warned from haphazard experimentation, but Hinata was so done with this shit. She made her digestive system more efficient. It didn't help much, but instead of having to go to the toilet every day, now she only needed to do it once every 4 days. Needless to say, Ino was mightily jealous and Hinata got her ego boost when Ren praised her for her efforts. It was worth it. On the 4th day, she even created a way to make her body sweat less. It was no glorious achievement. But after being allowed to only take a brief bath during their stop at a river on the 2nd day, Hinata appreciated anything that allowed her to reduce her smell. Even Ino begged her to apply it on her and Hinata did, because she was a good teammate. Of course, the bastard who enjoyed their suffering was not sweating at all. Either he had just that much stamina or, the theory Hinata was more inclined to believe, he came from hell to torment good and upstanding people like her. If only, Hinata thought with a sigh. He most likely simply had some seal or technique to do away with such a mundane concern. And once again, she was irritated that he didn't share it with them only to feel bad a few moments later about it. Because as a clan ninja, Hinata knew that her teacher did not need to share anything with them. She knew she was just being irrational and unreasonable. The fact that he shared his gravity seals for training purposes and his personal co-op shadow clone technique was already extremely generous. Their teacher was simply amazing, and much to her secret amusement, he didn't even realize it. He was always so genuine with them. And seeing him so lost when he finally figured out that both Ino and she had hots for him was downright adorable. Hinata would cherish that moment for the rest of her life. The Aquan was a mighty tool, especially in the hands of somebody who knows medical ninjutsu. Her clan really had no idea what they were missing out on because of their pride. It was the same problem as with looking for herbs. Yes, people with Byakugan can see inside human bodies. They can see muscles, veins, nerves, organs, bones, brains, everything really. But her clan members only focused on the chakra network, happy to disregard everything else as unimportant. After all, you need to understand what you were looking at to make use of it. They simply did not understand. Hinata was honestly happy that Ren made her focus on medical ninjutsu. And sometimes, she hated it too. Because there was just no hiding in front of her eyes. She could see how people would move based on how their muscles twitched before they even started the motion. She could see bioelectricity coursing through the nerves and brain. She could see the heart beating and every other organ working. She could see much, much more than that. And based on that, she could deduce a lot. She could even tell how people felt at times. For example, Ino was full of shit and tried to act all aloof and cool, but Hinata knew the Yamatsu girl was insecure. She knew when the bimbo lied. and she lied a lot. She boasted and puffed her chest out like a peacock when she actually felt inferior, and she hated it with passion. It was why Ino spent so much time practicing in her mindscape, why she was so driven to train herself to the ground. It was downright irritating to hear Ino praise the ground Uchiha walked on during the past few months, because Hinata could literally see that the girl was lying through her teeth, that she was not all that interested in the duck-butt-haired brooder, and whenever Ino did that in front of Ren in some misguided desire to get his attention without even realizing what she was doing, Hinata wanted to punch her across the face, because she saw how aroused Ino usually was in Ren's presence, that she was secretly swooning over their teacher as much as Hinata did, and she couldn't even fault the bimbo for it. On the upside, Hinata forgave her father for being an absolute prick, because with her medical knowledge and her Byakugan, she finally got a proper confirmation that he did care for her under his stoic resting bitch face, just as she got a confirmation that her grandfather truly could not give a damn about her alongside the rest of the clan elders, or that many branch family Hyagas were afraid of her, or the fact that several of her female classmates started to feel jealous of her since she grew her hair out, and much to her quiet horror, the fact that Uchiha Sasuke could get an actual boner. When looking at her, Hinata shuddered. She could have happily lived without that information, but her Byakugan did not discriminate. Honestly, the Uchiha was not the only boy who had a boner when looking her way. Many did. In the academy, as she walked through the streets of Konoha, even in her own home, it was as disturbing as it was a confidence boost at the start. But now Hinata didn't have any more fucks to give. It was just part of her life. It wasn't anything special. Mizuki was aroused by her too, as was Irika, slightly aroused when looking at Ino. Their Kunoichi class instructor had hots for Sakura, but only until the pinkette opened her mouth. Then it turned into irritation. Naruto did not really love Sakura. He said he did, but his body reactions disagreed with his words. Sasuke and Naruto did find each other attractive, and they both found it extremely disturbing. It was always amusing to see it when they glared at each other. Irika genuinely felt sorry for Naruto and wanted to help him. Mizuki hated him with a burning passion. At least her cousin Niji's hate boner for her did not contain any actual boner. There was only genuine hate. Hinata could see a lot with her eyes. Not everything was pleasant. Focusing on her chakra and refining a small bit of it into yang chakra, she let it wash over her body, easing its fatigue as she secretly thanked the Akimichi clan for unknowingly showing her how to mold yang chakra. Ren was right. The secrets were all there for the taking. She just needed to grasp it. Suddenly Ino tripped on a root, and as she flailed her arms while falling down, she managed to grab Hinata, causing her to widen her eyes before she was pulled down onto the ground by the blonde. Groaning, Ino apologized, but Hinata just closed her eyes with a pained grimace. "Ino, there was shit in the grass where we fell," she dryly deadpanned, making the blonde shriek like a banshee. Sometimes, she truly hated being able to see so much. Chapter 58 CH 58 Bandit Camp. After 2 weeks of traveling, Ren, Ino, and Hinata finally reached the bandit camp they were supposed to wipe out. They hid in the nearby tree line as they observed their targets. The camp was located on the topmost northwestern side of the Land of Fire, where their country bordered the Land of Grass. It was also conveniently placed in the very opposite direction from the Land of Waves. In fact, it was the furthest place in the Land of Fire from the Land of Waves. It was pretty much impossible to get any further from that damned place and still stay within the Land of Fire. That was deliberate on Ren's part. There was just no way he would go anywhere close to the Land of Waves. Missions in that direction always went fucky-wucky for him. Always. It's not paranoia when they are out to get you. He had his students with him, so he didn't need any unscheduled excitement. Looking at the girls, Ren couldn't help but chuckle at the looks of utter happiness when they saw the bandit camp. They were pretty jittery about killing despite the years of desensitization the academy put them through, but after their 2-week-long camping trip across the Lands of Fire, the girls just wanted to get it over with and go home. Ren would call them pussies, if he wasn't pretty much the same. He was far less inconvenienced than them thanks to his many quality-of-life techniques and seals, but he absolutely hated camping in the wilderness too. Honestly, they could have gotten to the camp within 2 days after leaving Konoha, something the girls were definitely going to notice on their way back, and Ren couldn't wait to see their expressions. They were not focused enough to notice they headed south instead of north after leaving the village. Ren took them on a joy run through the Land of Fire first, going south, then heading west, and leading them north from there, while showing them the land. He pointed out the location of important cities, the locations of bounty collection houses, and he showed them the ninja outposts Konoha had all over the country. Of course, they never entered any of them. Ren mainly focused on teaching them essential things they needed to know when camping, but showing them where they could hide, find accommodations, or get help if something went wrong in case they found themselves on a mission in these parts of their country was just common sense. And anyway, it was their fault they did not notice they were being led in a completely opposite direction from where their mission target was. Ren was going to chew their heads for it after they came back to Konoha. He kinda expected better awareness from them, but he wasn't going to be too hard on them because of it. He had his own idiot moments where he missed the obvious. These things happen. He was just glad to notice that the girls had a massive hole in their education when it came to general knowledge, so he was going to need to focus on that in the future too. It was such a massive drag. The academy was great at training future ninjas. The kids were taught a lot of essential basics of ninja life, but they were not taught much else. Ren put his hand on the blonde's shoulder, getting her attention. I know you could probably take control of all of them with your self-made clan jutsu bullshit before making them commit suicide. He gave the blonde a pointed look, but don't. And just like that, the glad looks of his students dimmed and their nervosity was back in full force as they realized that this was it. Their first kill. Ino opened her mouth to argue. Ren could see the indignation in her eyes. But then she just deflated and sullenly nodded as she summoned her sword from the storage seal on her wrist. Ren gave her a reassuring smile before he relocated his hand from her shoulder to her head and gently ruffled her hair, making her give him an embarrassed scowl with just the barest hints of a happy smile behind it. You want us to kill them in close-range combat? Hinata put what Ino understood into words, her tone gaining an undertone of silent dread. Yes. Ren admitted and noticed that Hinata was clutching her hands so tightly that her knuckles became white. He took her right hand and tried to comfortingly squeeze it. And it did help to calm Hinata down a bit, but she was still slightly shaking. These people should be no problem for you. They are ordinary civilian bandits. He glanced at Hinata, who activated her Byakugan and nodded at him. Good. There was no ninja hidden among them. I also made sure that people in that camp are scum who revel in murder and rape. They destroyed and looted several nearby villages, torturing men and boys to death while raping the women and girls before killing them. Ren really did not need Ino and Hinata's first kill to be some misguided unfortunate kids who stole to feed their younger siblings. Shit like that could cause a lifetime of trauma. He put a damn good effort into ensuring his girls would go against the scum they could easily justify killing to themselves. This needed to be done if they were to become kunoichi. But there was no need to be a dick about it and have them kill innocent kids to blood them. Look at Danzo and see how that was working out for him. Making children live together for years, enough to become best friends, and then tell them they need to kill the other for their first kill because only one of them will be allowed to live? Sure, it created stone-cold killers, but Danzo had decades to set up his route and it was still a pretty shit organization all things considered. There were reasons why the other villages never quite sunk that low, or why the only village that did, the Kirigakure, was pretty much widely known as the weakest and was always having civil unrest. Even Suna was in a better position despite their huge problems and literally being located in the middle of bumfuck nowhere in the desert. Don't worry about us. We can do this. Ino smirked, giving Hinata a taunting look. Right, bitch. It served well to make Hinata tear her gaze from the bandit camp as she turned her eyes to Ino with a small frown. Yes. The bimbo is correct. She released a slow sigh and the tension left her as her shoulders slightly sagged while she squeezed Ren's hand back. We can do this. With that, Ren let the girls be. The stage was theirs. It took them 10 more minutes to gather their nerves. No matter how much Ino boasted, Ren saw that she had to wipe her sweaty palms on her skirt a few times during these 10 minutes. Hinata tried to do some breathing exercises to keep herself calm while chewing on her lower lip. Ren almost thought the girls would chicken out, but then, they suddenly shared a glance, released the gravity seals on them, and sprang forward from the tree, almost blurring toward the bandit camp. Ruefully chuckling to himself, Ren felt melancholic, looking at the sky. If possible, he would have preferred if his students stayed the innocent wide-eyed naive girls they were when he met them for the first time. This world was really rotten. It put a sour taste in his mouth that he was now a cog in the brutal system they had over here. 3 minutes later, the girls were done. All 30 bandits were dead. Just as Ren predicted, it wasn't even a struggle. The girls were simply too fast as Hinata used her gentle fist and Ino used her sword to decimate the bandits. Ren was just glad they stayed focused during the fight and had their breakdown only after the threat was neutralized. Ren walked into the silent camp, noticing that Ino was looking at her bloodied sword with a frown as slashed bodies surrounded her and a puddle of blood was forming under her feet. Hinata sat in a W-sitting position a bit further away, silently crying as undamaged bodies surrounded her, the bandits looking as if they were sleeping instead of deceased. With a sigh, Ren came closer to the Hyuga girl and kneeled next to her before hugging her. She instantly pressed her head into his shoulder and started sobbing, making Ren feel even worse as he put his hand on Hinata's head and tried to comfort her by soothingly caressing her head. He gave Ino a questioning look, but the blonde just continued giving her blade a forlorn look. Seeing that she wasn't paying attention, he spoke, Ino. The blonde girl slightly flinched and abruptly turned toward him, only to blink several times before she slightly shook her head. I am fine. Yes, I expected to feel bad, no, Ino said, sounding somewhat upset. Does that make me a bad person? She frowned, looking a bit bothered at that question. Come here. Ren invitingly spread his left arm. Hinata took his right side but there was enough space for one more to join their hug. Ino just huffed at him, an amused glint entering her blue eyes, but she didn't argue and just put her sword back into her storage seal before leaping toward Ren and tightly cuddling to his left side and nuzzling her face into his neck with happy, satisfied voices and silent squeal while completely ignoring the bodies around them. It was so out there for their current situation and surroundings that even Hinata released a few giggles through her sobs and Ren smiled as he put his left arm around Ino's shoulders, pulling her closer to him. Now, if only the kneeling position he was in was not so damn uncomfortable. Well, he could bear it for a few minutes more, but after that, Ren's eyes looked at the camp around him. It was in pristine condition if he didn't take into account all the corpses and puddles of blood, but it wasn't going to loot and destroy itself. Nor were the corpses going to bury themselves unless Ino somehow pulls necromancy out of her ass next. Ren wouldn't be that surprised, but he wasn't that lucky. A few minutes passed and Ren decided it was time to continue in their task. Peeking down at his girls fully relaxed in his arms, a smirk involuntarily appeared on his face. you do realize the cleaning duty is still waiting for you, right? Both girls froze in his embrace and he couldn't help but laugh. Yup. Being a ninja was not all about flashy and cool battles while saving princesses. Sucks to suck. Chapter 59, ch 59, Peaceful Mission. Not it took the girls 2 hours to deal with the bodies and Ren enjoyed watching them struggle and rage. They could have just dragged them underground with the hiding like a mole technique and been done with it, but clearly, that did not come to his students' minds yet. So, instead, they dragged all of them outside the camp, one by one, put them on a pile, and set them on fire. Very inelegant and mundanely uninspired way of corpse disposal. But watching his girls curse under their noses and scrunch their faces due to the smell was a treat for Ren's sore eyes. Their faces when he told them the hiding like a mole trick, only after they were done, of course, were priceless too. Not to mention, the corpse bonfire pretty much alerted everybody in the vicinity to their position due to the smoke. But the labor, as distasteful as it was, helped Hinata to center herself. When they were finished with the work, the evening was quickly approaching. There was no reason to waste a perfectly good camp, so Ren decided they would be staying there for a night. After unsealing some fresh meat and other ingredients from his storage seal, Ren set up a bonfire and started to cook proper food to reward his students for a job well done. The dinner and everything went well and Ren couldn't help but be happy. The mission was done. Their little trip was coming to an end. And there was no unexpected incident. What was there to not like? After dinner, Ren was back to comforting his students. He lay on the grass, looking at the stars while Hinata almost desperately cuddled into his left side, her head lying on his shoulder. The poor girl was still shaking a bit. Contrary to how Ren perceived her, Hinata did feel down, but she was also delighted. Ren had his hand around her stomach and held her tightly against him. She couldn't help the excited thrill that refused to leave her mind as she felt Ren's muscles on her body. Butterflies were storming through her stomach and she was inwardly squealing in delight. He soothingly caressed her hair, making her melt into a happy puddle. Hinata wanted to stay like this forever. Ren couldn't help but inwardly sigh as he felt Hinata quiver in his arms. The killing clearly affected her a lot. He also noticed that she was very touch-starved. It made sense. Her father was not the most touchy-feely person. Her clan was doing its damnedest to separate her from her sister. And her mother was dead. The only touch she got growing up probably happened during training and resulted in bruises. Will we have to kill a lot of people as Kunoichi? An unbothered voice suddenly cut through the air as if talking about the weather, and Ren inwardly winced as he felt Hinata stiffen against him. He glanced down at Ino, who was leisurely lying near him, her head on his stomach. She was using her wind chakra to float a book above her head, reading some crappy romance novel she brought with her from the village. The girl was cool as a cucumber. Even during the corpse disposal, Hinata showed a lot of distaste and a touch of regret, but Ino? She was just annoyed that she had to deal with the unpleasant grunt work and Ren forbade her from using clones to do her part. Ino was stone cold. Then again, Ren did expect it, but seeing her attitude still threw him a bit for the loop. Interacting with the girls could lull one to the false belief that they were simply normal teenage girls, but that was not true. Both of his students were clan-raised Kunoichi. It was a small miracle Hinata felt bad enough to cry after her first kill. If nothing else, the village and the clans were very efficient in raising ninjas. The academy was low-key desensitizing the kids toward killing and causing bodily harm for years before they even had to step out of the village. The spars were not only to practice fighting, after all. A kid couldn't just go into it with a haphazard attitude and expect to win. No, to win, a kid needed the resolve to cause bodily harm to his classmate. And over the years, such resolve became a normal thing. After so many years in the academy, kids end up more or less like Ino. Ren glanced at the blonde girl who was peacefully reading her book with a wide content smile on her face. Yup, not even a shred of guilt. It would be hard to believe for a normal person that the same adorable girl had just slaughtered a score of men in a very bloody fashion, and she did feel bad and a bit nauseous afterward. But these feelings passed in a few moments for her. It wasn't even a blip on her radar by now. The killing was a part of their job, and the academy was subtly sending this message to the kids for years. They did not have stories about heroes saving innocents and catching the villains. They had stories about ninjas saving princesses and killing the rebels, about saving the village by killing the traitors to the village, about saving innocents by killing the bandits. For Ino, killing was a normal thing like learning physics was for a kid from Ren's previous life. She didn't seem to enjoy the act very much, for which Ren was immensely grateful. Psycho Yamanaka did not sound like a very good combination to deal with in his day-to-day life. But at the same time, the girl found killing at worst bothersome rather than having a true aversion to it. It's simply the way she was raised. There was a reason why in the anime Naruto never showed much remorse after he killed people. They were ninja and this was a part of their life. To Ren, Hinata's reaction showed that, no matter how confident she acted, she was still a very kind girl, and it made him glad that his training did not manage to rid her of that trait. Yes, you will kill more people than anybody should be comfortable with. Ren told the Yamanaka girl the truth with an uncomfortable sigh, causing Hinata to attempt to bury her face into his skin while Ino just hummed. The only advice I can give you is to never show you enjoy it. Why? Hinata interjected. Ren turned his head toward her, because the village has an entire team to make profiles of their ninjas. If you show dislike for killing, you are more likely to end up on protection detail rather than assassinations or missions where a wholesale slaughter is required. Konoha could pick and choose the right man for every mission. More or less. The village had a lot of manpower. Some ninjas downright enjoyed killing, rape, and torture. But the village had no reason not to use them. They were a loose cannon, sure, but why waste resources? That makes sense. Ino casually nodded. Ren started only to freeze when his chakra detection seal suddenly showed 3 chakra signatures running in their direction. Ren created a clone nearby and instantly substituted with it, leaving it to the mercy of the girls. Both Hinata and Ino instantly noticed, and Ino looked at the real him. Something's up. Yes. 3 ninjas approaching. Ren said as he nodded at Hinata, who activated her Byakugan. 1 Kunoichi from Kusa running from 2 ER. I don't recognize the headband mark, but it is a musical note. Threat level, I'd say Lochinen? Haigenin? Somewhere around there. The girl has the biggest chakra reserves, but she doesn't seem very well trained. Hinata tried to sum up her observations while Ino grinned. Yosh, let's G-Woa. She excitedly spoke and tried to swing herself onto her feet, only for Ren's clone to quickly put his arm across her shoulders, pulling her head back down onto his stomach. Your parents would try to murder me if I let you face off against real ninjas. The real Ren deadpanned at the Yamanaka, making her pout. We don't have to tell them. Ino tried to weakly protest, but Ren just shook his head, causing her to huff as she realized there was no more action for her today. A mischievous gleam entered her blue eyes a second later, and she twisted in the clone's grip, enough to loosen it. She quickly took the clone's head into her hands and pressed her lips onto his for a moment. Breaking the kiss, Ino looked at the real Ren, who had his eyebrow raised at her. She grinned. Oh? What are you waiting for? Don't you have 3 ninjas to deal with? Well, go on. I'll just stay here, making out with my teddy bear. I'll try to make it memorable. She teased Ren with a grin before turning back to the exasperated clone, who did not struggle much when she once again kissed him with a moan, her tongue demanding an entry to his mouth. The original Ren resisted the urge to facepalm. Instead, he just rolled his eyes at the girl. From her wording, she was probably under the misconception that she could seduce him this way because he would get the memories of their kissing once his clone popped. He would need to clear that misconception one of these days. Yes, clones did share memories, but memories did not contain proper sensations or feelings. So, Ren's clone was probably enjoying himself, and Ren would most likely blush once he got the memories, but he wouldn't be feeling her kiss or the feelings it invoked in his clone. It's why not many ninjas use it for sex unless they want to make their partner happy. The technique did not properly convey sensation, so yeah, having the memories of dogpiling your partner in bed might be nice for an ego boost, and your partner will most likely enjoy herself immensely if she is into that. But you will still only get the pleasure from your original body. I wonder how Ino will look once I tell her that. Ren inwardly chuckled to himself as he used Shunshin to disappear from the camp and ran toward the approaching chakra signatures. Landing on a tree after 2 minutes of running, and seeing the 2 sound ninjas chasing a girl, Ren owlishly blinked. Is that Uzumaki Karen? He thought while stifling a groan, and the mission was going so well too. Of course, some bullshit needs to screw it up. Exasperation filled Ren as he watched the desperate redhead stumbling through the forest while running for her life and gasping for air, tears streaming down her face while her eyes were full of fear as the 2 sound ninjas were clearly having fun with the chase. Karen suddenly tripped over a root with a startled yelp and fell roughly onto the ground. The 2 grinning sound ninjas jumped at her, restraining her hands above her head, and whispered something to the terrified girl, whose eyes widened in horror. Ren was too far to hear them, but he quickly realized what was going on when the ninja holding her hand started to fiddle with his pants and the other one began tearing Karen's clothes off while she screamed and kicked in protest and desperation as she struggled in their grasp. Ren had a decision in front of him. Get mixed in the situation despite his seal detecting S-rank chakra signature coming closer to their position, or, who am I kidding? He dejectedly sighed at his luck as he jumped to intervene. He owed it to Naruto. Chapter 60, ch 60, Naruto's relative Ren sprang forward and silently landed near the trio. The 2 sound ninjas did not even notice him, too caught up and reveling in Karen's struggle. With a smooth movement, Ren unsealed a kunao and with a wide sweep from behind, he burrowed it right to the side of the man who was tearing Karen's clothing off. Instantly, Ren followed up by creating a shadow clone on the other side of Karen. The last remaining man who was holding Karen's hands finally managed to wiggle his penis out of his pants when Ren's kunao landed inside his partner's neck and was caught flat-footed. His eyes bulged out and his body tensed, preparing for action as he half-turned in Ren's direction on instinct, only for blood to spray on Karen's face as the man's throat was slit open from behind by Ren's clone, some of the blood landing in Karen's mouth, which made her stop screaming and start to choke while sobbing with a whimper. And that, kids, is why rape is bad for you. Ren flatly thought as he tore his kunao from his victim's throat and shoved the body to the side in a way that would ensure it did not land on the currently distraught redhead girl. His clone did something similar and pulled his victim off Karen before haphazardly throwing his body away. The 2 might have put up enough of a fight to get a chance to run away if they had not been so caught up in trying to force themselves on Karen. But Ren's trouble was not over yet. Part of the reason why he dispatched the 2 so quickly was the still approaching S-rank ninja he could feel with his detection seal. And he was speeding up too. Ren briefly wondered if the S-rank ninja sensed the demise of the 2 sound ninjas, but he quickly regained his wits and glanced at his shadow clone, who slightly nodded before dispersing. Ren looked at Karen, who was staring at him in wide-eyed terrified shock while almost hyperventilating and still crying as she tried to stifle her whimpers because her face was covered in blood. She was clearly still afraid for her life, but there was a bit of hopeful relief in her eyes too. Her presence explained why the three ninjas his detection seal warned him off ran straight in Ren's team's direction. She was probably running from her assailants and felt Ren's chakra signature thanks to her mind's eye of the Kagura bloodline technique before deciding that he was her best bet to escape the pursuit. Lucky her to encounter him. Really, what were the odds? Still, Ren's arm swished in her direction just as she calmed down a bit and started opening her mouth to speak, and he suddenly knocked her out, making her unconscious body slump on the ground. He didn't need to deal with a hysterical girl right now. The S-rank ninja was almost upon him. At best, he would take 30 seconds to arrive. Seriously, Ren inwardly groaned. What were the chances of meeting 4 S-rank ninjas in 2 C-rank missions? His luck truly sucked dick. But not his dick. Never his dick. He was starting to feel like some retarded shonen protagonist who has strong villains thrown in his path for fun and giggle by some random omnipotent bastard. But, no, not today. Ren took a seal from his pocket and started channeling chakra into it while glaring into the distance. 17 seconds later, Orochimaru, with his trademarked creepy smile, walked from behind a tree as if he had always been there, but Ren knew, for a fact, that the man had just arrived a moment ago. Because of course, it would be Orochimaru, Ren inwardly cursed. Who else with S-rank prowess could possibly show up after preventing 2 sound mooks from kidnapping the Uzumaki girl who worked for the creep in canon? It couldn't have been somebody more friendly and cuddly. Really, Ren was not even surprised, and it gave the Slytherin wannabe a bit of pause when he didn't instantly burst into terror upon seeing him. Good. Ren was playing for time anyway. 18 seconds left. Orochimaru glanced at the 2 corpses and his smile widened before he looked straight at Ren. Oh, my, what a curious S-. But Ren didn't care. He wasn't going to let him monologue. He just gave the pale man a double middle finger while screaming, "Get fucker, loser." Orochimaru momentarily stumbled in his tracks and owlishly blinked. 19 seconds left. Conveniently, a smoke bomb somehow found its way out of Ren's pocket when he was shouting and went off right when he finished his sentence, covering the vicinity in a cloud of thick white smoke. Barely a moment passed after the bomb went off and Ren could instantly feel the gathering of heavily condensed wind chakra, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. But it didn't matter. 20 seconds passed and he was done. Orochimaru used the wind style, great breakthrough, to blow away the smoke. He might have given the technique enough oomph to break bones after being disrespected by some nameless chunin, but everything was fine. The Uzumaki girl could be healed even if some of her bones were broken, and her value as a research subject would not diminish either. Orochimaru's grin, however, fell when the smoke dispersed, revealing that his prey somehow slipped away with his price. His eyes narrowed as a displeased frown appeared on his face, and he instantly summoned a horde of snakes before giving them an order to search the surrounding area and start tracking the Konoha ninja and the Uzumaki girl. He was not losing a rare Uzumaki test subject with awakened bloodlines. And who knows? If the Konoha ninja surprised him again, maybe he would even give him some mild painkillers while vivisecting him. Several hundred miles away, Ren suddenly appeared out of nowhere in a small forest clearing and barely managed to keep himself on his feet as the relief hit him and he swayed from side to side. Orochimaru would not be getting to him today. He was not going to fight an S-rank ninja on a C-rank mission. He was not paid enough to do it. Screw that. He wasn't working for free like a bitch. So, he simply used his seal to teleport halfway through the Land of Fire, southeast of Konoha, maybe half a day away from the village. Considering that the bandit camp was northwest 2 days away from Konoha, Ren was on a completely other side of the country. Surely, not even Orochimaru had a way to get at him here, right? Right? Are you okay? Ren suddenly heard and looked to the side, only to see Hinata looking worriedly at him. He gave her a reassuring smile despite feeling quite fed up with his shitty luck. And who is the girl? Ino huffed in irritation while standing next to Hinata with her arms on her hips, her eyes narrowed at the redhead Ren had on his shoulder. Now that Ino reminded him, the girl was kinda heavy. Ren unceremoniously dumped Karen's body onto the ground with a small thud, causing her to let out a groan despite staying unconscious. Then, he sat down on a nearby rock where his transportation seal was inscribed and let out a calming breath as the tension left him. He released a disbelieving laugh at actually managing to pull a niggerundeo move. Wasn't that practically defying the heavens or fighting against fate or some other bullshit? This running away thingy was seriously underrated. Ren decided he would need to indulge in the practice more. The shadow clone he dispersed after dispatching Karen's attackers alerted the clone he left with the girls, and so, the clone instantly teleported them here. Ren wasn't risking his students. Not with Orochimaru in the vicinity. They were safe and sound, hundreds of miles away from the pedophile gay creep before the man even showed himself in front of Ren. And thank the sugar daddy sage for Orochimaru's propensity for grandstanding and dramatics. If the man had instantly attacked when he reached Ren's position, then Ren wouldn't have been able to pull off the teleport and would have needed to properly engage the snake sunin, which was not something he wanted to do anytime soon. Not ever, really. The guy fought with his tongue. Ew. No idea. Ren lied, and both Hinata and Ino narrowed their eyes at him, both catching the lie in their own way. But Ren just rolled his eyes at them. Okay. Correction. I am not telling you anything other than she is an Uzumaki. He deadpanned at the girls. One of these days he was going to teach them the unofficial ninja etiquette. Rule number 1, don't call ninjas on their obvious bullshit lies because they probably have something to hide and won't tell you anyway, was very important. Hearing that the girl was an Uzumaki, Hinata's head snapped toward Karen and she quickly approached her before kneeling next to her body as she started to heal her. Ino, however, didn't have such an appreciation for all things Uzumaki and just snorted. "And why did you bring her here? She is clearly from Kusa." Ino grumpily complained, getting a chastising look from Hinata. Ren shrugged and bent down, so done with today. He took the forehead protector from Karen's head before summoning a kunai from his storage seal and uncaringly slashing a gash through the middle of the headband, looking at Ino with a raised eyebrow. "Opsy," he gave Ino an innocent smile. "You were saying? I don't see any Kusa ninja. Just Naruto's relative." Both Ino and Hinata gaped at him as if they had never seen the creation of a rogue ninja. Geez. His girls were easy to impress indeed. Chapter 61, ch 61. The greater good of Konoha. Ren, Ino, and Hinata ran to the village at the fastest speed the girls could manage, and when they arrived, the girls were panting and trying to catch their breath while their legs throbbed in pain. Surprisingly, Karen stayed unconscious for the 9 hours it took them to get back to Konoha, so Ren carried her body slung over his shoulder. It wasn't even an inconvenience, and besides, he probably hit her a bit too hard due to his stress from an imminent meeting with Pedokomaru. It wasn't her fault that she was out of commission, and Ren found it amusing how Hinata and Ino were throwing the unconscious girl some not subtle enough looks of jealous indignation. After reaching Konoha, Ren told the girls their trip was over and they separated. The girls went home to rest while Ren headed toward the cage tower to report on his mission and the almost clash with Orochimaru. Fortunately, encounters with the Snake Sunin were taken very seriously. It was enough to get him an audience with the Hokage where he could hopefully offload the Uzumaki girl to the old man's care. As much as Ren didn't like Hiruzen, he knew the man did have Naruto's well-being in mind. For the most part. Maybe? Alright, the old man screwed the pooch with the blonde-haired kid so much that it seemed to be almost malicious. But Ren knew it wasn't. The old-timer seemed to really try and give it his all. Oh, he neglected Naruto? Well, whoop-de-doo. He neglected his own family too. Hell, he neglected his own family more than he neglected Naruto. All for the sake of running Konoha as its Hokage. Then again, nobody could accuse the Hokage, or any Kage in existence, current or past, that they are good managers. Because they are frankly not. They suck at it. They were good ninjas and good killers. They understood the ninja life the best. But throw them into a position where they are supposed to rule and manage in village and they are going to screw up because it is not their specialty. Some people in Ren's past life argued that Kages could easily replace the daimyos. But that was a keyboard warrior level of bullshit. The Kages had a hard time keeping one village where they ruled as military dictators from crumbling on their heads. Case in point, Raza, Onaki, Yagura. Seriously, Ren could go on. Even Hiruzen fucked up more than not during his decades of ruling Konoha. They lost Senju and Uchiha during his rule. The village weakened a lot from its heyday too. He was pretty much the only known S-rank ninja in the village right now, and that was saying something about how much the village degraded during his rule. But when it came to war, Hiruzen has managed to win every single one so far. He was a great ninja and commander. Just not a good manager. He especially sucked at delegating his duties and responsibilities, hence why he was always so swamped with paperwork that should have never even reached his table. Ren was led to the Hokage's office after he briefly reported that he encountered Orochimaru and inwardly snorted when he saw the old man laboring over a stack of papers with frustratedly furrowed eyebrows and a fierce frown. Honestly, how could anybody think that this dude could rule a nation? He couldn't keep together even his own damn backyard properly. Lord Hokage. Chunin Ren returned from his C-rank bandit extermination mission and reported the sighting of the traitor Orochimaru. The man who led Ren to the office reported, and Hiruzen instantly straightened up as if he was jolted by lightning. His serious eyes landed on Ren, almost making him flinch from the fierce gleam in the Hokage's look. "Where?" "Near the border with the land of grass." Ren replied. He tried to get this girl. He casually pointed his thumb at the ass of the girl he had bent over his shoulder. And it was a very nice ass too. Ren smirked when he saw Hiruzen's eyes linger just a tad bit too long on it. "I think she is an Uzumaki." Ren dropped the bomb, causing Hiruzen's eyes to widen while he gently put Karen on the couch in the office. Contrary to the popular belief in Ren's past life, not every redhead in Narutoverse instantly had Uzumaki blood. True Uzumaki were extremely rare. Konoha was on a constant lookout for them ever since their village was destroyed. And yet, Naruto is still the only Uzumaki in the village. That's how rare they were. Hiruzen quickly schooled his expression and gave the young girl a considering look while trying and succeeding to appear unconcerned. "And? Is that why you dragged her to the village all the way from the border?" Hiruzen nonchalantly asked, only for Ren to shrug. "Yup. I figured Naruto could use a cousin. She is a Kusa Kunoichi, isn't she?" Hiruzen raised his eyebrow at Ren, who had to admit the old man had an amazing poker face. He seemed almost disinterested in the girl. But, who was this old coot kidding? Konoha was thirsty for more Uzumaki. There was no way he would be sending her away. Kusa Kunoichi or not. Even if she didn't want to stay, she had no choice in the matter anymore. The only reason Ren took her to Konoha despite knowing this was that it was better for her to be a part of Konoha's forces than to be a toy for Orochimaru. And the man would certainly find her if she was let to roam the world freely. In Konoha, he just might decide she is more hassle than she is worth before moving on to some other project, forgetting about her existence. And if not? Sucks to be Karen. Getting an in with the Hokage and Naruto was certainly going to serve the girl well as far as her protection was considered too. It's why Ren blatantly sneaked her on his shoulder to Sarutobi's office, not leaving her to the care of some career Chunin. This way, the most influential man in the village knew he had another Uzumaki in the village and it was less likely she would encounter some unfortunate accident a la Danzo before Hokage could be even informed of her existence. Speaking of which, judging by the bite marks on her body, Ren hummed, hinting at Karen's bloodline and feeling a sliver of satisfaction when he saw Hiruzen momentarily react. It was just a small hitch of his breath. Split second. But it was there. Got him. The old fossil of a man probably recognized an Uzumaki bloodline that left bite marks upon use. Which was, once again, good for Karen. Uzumaki blood was one thing. Active bloodline limit was a complete different beast entirely. It would serve her as yet another line of defense and a reason why Hokage would feel inclined to keep her truly safe. They don't treat her very well over there. Ren shrugged, she might be agreeable to change her allegiance, and faking her demise isn't going to be such a big issue. Orochimaru's flunkies chased her to the border. And she ran straight toward my team, so she probably has some potent sensory ability too. Hiruzen's eyes once again flickered toward the girl on the couch and despite his calm facade, Ren could tell the man was very pleased and dare he say, excited about that information. I guess I have earned myself a bonus pay here. Ren inwardly chuckled as he continued speaking. I highly doubt the girl ran all the way to the border from Kusagakur. Her team was most likely on a mission when they were attacked, and they are probably dead. I see. Hiruzen calmly nodded in understanding. People died on a mission all the time. It was nothing new. We can always ask her. Ren offered and the old man chuckled. That we can. What do you say, Miss Uzumaki? Hiruzen turned toward the prone girl who lay on the couch and stiffened the second she was asked the question. They both noticed that she was awake for the whole conversation. Ren even lightly bonked her head on the doorframe when he was entering, wondering if she would stop pretending to be unconscious. She didn't, so it was a well-justified bonk. Karen's eyes flew wide open and she quickly stood up, momentarily swaying on her feet, before she straightened and bowed low. A pleasure to meet you, Lord Hokage, she exclaimed, her tone tinged with worry while her body shook a bit. Ren doubted she expected to find herself in the Hokage Tower in Konoha when she woke up. Sucks to be her. He did this for her own protection. The least she could do was not resist. Calm down, my girl. Hiruzen softly spoke and Ren inwardly cringed. Yup, here it was. The grandfather act. His skin crawled when he witnessed it, but the old bastard had it down pat. No wonder Naruto practically worshipped the ground he walked on. Yes. Karen mumbled as she ceased her bow, but she kept her head ducked, not looking at Hiruzen whose lips made the barest, barely noticeable disgruntled twitch in reaction. Heh. The girl had trust issues with authority figures. It seemed getting her trust would be much harder for the old coot than he initially thought. Ren couldn't help the small smirk appearing on his face. Hiruzen noticed, but he only lightly huffed before refocusing back on the girl. What is your name? Karen, Lord Hokage. The redhead answered. Just Karen. Karen hesitantly nodded, but she clearly heard their previous discussion and that made her dubiously ask, am I, er? Realizing she was asking about her surname and therefore clan, Hiruzen nodded. Most likely. Would you be amenable to becoming a Konoha Kunoichi? He asked. She seemed to hesitate for a moment before briefly glancing at Ren, which was not missed by Hiruzen, but then she nodded in mute and awkward agreement. Realizing that this was probably going to be a very long meeting between the Hokage and Karen, Ren decided to dip. Alright. With that, my report is over. I'll leave the rest in your hands, Lord Hokage. Can I be dismissed, please? I just finished my mission and I am dead on my feet. He politely asked, causing Karen to become dumbfounded at his impertinence toward the village's leader. It was a tad bit rude of him. Sure. But the good thing about Hiruzen was that he knew when to cut his ninjas some slack. Plus, it would make him seem more approachable to the clearly distraught and distrusting Uzumaki girl if he didn't make an issue out of Ren's request. There was also that. Unfortunately for Ren, he miscalculated. Hiruzen's eyes sparkled as he released a short laugh. Haha, no. You brought her to the village, Ren, you are now responsible for her. He informed Ren with an expression as though butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. Excuse me, but what in the actual fuck? Ren stumbled in his place when he heard the request/order from his military overlord. He looked at the subtly smug face of the Hokage in disbelief. These words might seem innocent, but the bastard practically made him her handler and minder. After all, she was still a foreign kunoichi in Konoha. Of course, she would need oversight. But even then, she should be minded by the Umbu, not some run-of-the-mill Chunin like him. Should have left her to Orochimaru. Ren silently complained in his mind, already picturing what a hassle this was going to be for him. I'll allocate an empty apartment for your use, Miss Uzumaki. It will be ready tomorrow. For now, please go with Ren. He can house you for one night and show you the village in the meantime. I am too busy to deal with this situation right now and some preparations will need to be done first. Just like that, Hiruzen volunteered Ren's house without even asking first and Karen slightly nodded while awkwardly averting her gaze. Ren impassively tried to stare a hole into the old bastard. He got the inkling this was some sort of manipulation on his part. He didn't miss the fact that he saved the girl from quite a gruesome fate. Nor did he miss the comparison between what he did and what Sasuke did in the canon. But no friggin' way in hell. He had his hands full with 2 teenage girls. 3 would outright kill him. Was that it? Was this some twisted assassination ploy by the Hokage because he interrupted his Ika rub time? He wasn't the harem protagonist here. Throw the redhead at Sasuke for all he cared. It would give the Uchiha a legitimate reason to be a broody little emo. Just don't ruin his peaceful life, damn it. Ren dejectedly slumped, knowing there was no way out of it now. He could already see Ino's and Hinata's reactions. Somehow, their constant glare at Karen when they were running to the village no longer seemed so amusing. Just bring her to the Hokage Tower tomorrow, Ren. Hiruzen told Ren while glancing into his calendar. I am free at 2 in the afternoon for an hour. He said with a sad undertone as he returned to his paperwork with a loud mutter, you are dismissed. There goes his Ika free time. Ren vengefully thought, but honestly? Fuck him. Deserved. As they left the office, Ren was upset. He was on yet another babysitting duty. An unpaid one, at that. No good deed goes unpunished indeed. But if the old coot wanted to play it this way? Sure, let's roll. He was sometimes playing with the thought of offering the Hokage the info about how useful shadow clones could be for paperwork, but he now felt it would be a great disservice to the village if he allowed the venerable overlord of the village to slack off and have something as distasteful as free time. The Hokage clearly needed to keep his skills sharp, and swinging that pen in his mighty hand certainly counted as an epic training montage. Kinda like masturbation. No wonder Orochimaru will fall by his hand. His mental wits were sharpened by facing numerous enemies in the form of rectangular paper in unending numbers, and his eyes were sharpened with focus as he needed to properly pay attention to every line. Yes. Paperwork was truly beneficial for Hiruzen Saraboite's health and the well-being of Konoha. Therefore, Ren felt it would be an act of high treason to give him that knowledge. But that was not enough, was it? Come. Ren smiled, trying and somewhat failing to not let the vindictiveness he felt seep into his grin while Karen meekly followed him through the village. There is this amazing ramen stand in this village, where Naruto or information about his whereabouts could be regularly found. It was time for a family reunion. Let's see how the Hokage liked an overly stubborn and determined blonde menace constantly pestering him about his family for the remainder of the next week or two. I am sure you will enjoy it immensely. Ren happily said with an encouraging clap. It's the favorite spot of the other Uzumaki in the village. That seemed to perk the girl's interest, and Ren felt a sense of vengeful glee fill him. All he did was for the greater good of Konoha. Chapter 62 Ch 62 Uzumaki meet Uzumaki. As Ren and Karen walked through the village, Ren distractedly pointed out various sites or shops and restaurants of note while he was inwardly brooding about the situation he found himself in. He had never understood the stories in which the main characters tried to get every canon female into their bed and make them join their harems. It sounded like a monumental drag. Hence, that is why he didn't feel like romancing Karen, at all. He did see how she acted around Sasuke and the Shippuden, and frankly speaking, no thank you very much. He could live without that kind of burden. Sure, she was beautiful. More beautiful than models in his past life. Chakra was unfair like that. She also had all 3 Uzumaki bloodline limits, which made her rarer than a winning lottery ticket. The village was probably going to bend over backward for her just to ensure she would have as many children as possible. But Ren simply lacked any desire for a deeper relationship with the girl. He wanted friendship. Even that was because of her status as a canon character. It was weird, and Ren realized his view was skewed in that regard, but it was his reality. He did feel more partial toward canon characters. It was not something he could really control, to be honest. But that didn't mean he would chase every canon female character like some horndog in wish fulfillment fantasy. That was just unrealistic. 2 girls were already a chore. He liked the fantasy of having more. But the reality of it was just not very tempting, even though he was just as horny as any other bastard would be in his place. For example, Sakura Haruno. Ren always thought that pink hair would look ridiculous in real life. But strangely enough, she pulled it off. All those insults about her big forehead amounted to nothing. The keyboard warriors complaining that she is flat amounted to nothing. The 15-year-old girl was sexy as sin in real life. The animation really did not do her justice. Ren was mature enough to admit that she managed to strike his lust with her appearance. But just because she was the main female lead in the manga, it didn't mean he would go out of his way to interact with her. He didn't do it for Naruto. He didn't do it for Sasuke. He wouldn't do it for her just because she lacked a dick and had some additional fat on her never mind. There was no additional fat on her chest area. Not to mention, Sakura was still an annoying and stupid brat with her head in the clouds. She hadn't had her reality checks yet, and she was actually worse than her anime counterpart because of the additional time in the academy. According to Ino, the pinkette regularly offers Sasuke to do unspeakable things to her chastity and mouth. She tries to be subtle, but she is also a horny teenage girl, so she seldom pulls subtlety off. And the boy is just about done with her bullshit. He just wants her to shut up and fuck off. 3 more years of the academy with her tried Sasuke's patience somewhat fiercely, and at this point, he could probably do a decent job as a monk. Ren wouldn't be surprised if the experience turned him into a gay. Sakura simply had such a profound effect on the opposite gender despite being drop-dead gorgeous. Glancing back at Karen, who followed him like a lost duckling while clutching the hem of his shirt, Ren inwardly sighed. He really hoped she wouldn't get a crush on him like she did on Sasuke in the anime. He didn't feel like dealing with that bullshit. Maybe securing a meeting between her and the Uchiha duckling would be in their best interest? Ren hummed. Now, there was an idea. Who knows? It could help Sasuke rediscover his straight tendencies. They quickly arrived at the ramen stand, and when Ren saw the unmistakably scratchy voice speaking inside, he grinned to himself. His plan was a go. He was fortunate to find Naruto here today. Then again, it was the holiday between school years, so the chances of him being here were about 50-50. Hello, Uzumaki, Mr. Tuki, I am. Ren greeted as he entered the ramen stand. Luckily, the place had no customers other than Naruto, so getting seats was no problem. Oh, hi, Ren. Ayam returned the greeting while Tuka nodded at him before focusing back on preparing the noodles. It was Naruto who instantly shouted, Ren, it's been a long time. You owe me ramen. No, I don't. Ren snorted and pressed his palm on the top of the boy's head, ruffling his hair despite his protests and making him pout. He then sat down with one seat empty between him and Naruto. Naruto gave him a stink eye and was about to complain about his uncool treatment when Karen followed Ren's example and sat down, giving Naruto an even unimpressed look. Ah! Naruto's mind shut down as he finally noticed Karen, and he silently stared back at her for a moment before blurting out the first thing that came to his mind. You have very pretty hair, he suddenly exclaimed, making Karen stop glaring at him as her cheeks mirrored her hair color. And you are blonde, she embarrassedly muttered, making Naruto scrunch his expression in confusion. Eh? What's that gotta do with anything? He frowned. I mean, shouldn't Uzumaki have red hair? I don't know that much about them, but... Karen unsurely asked, and Ren had to admit the girl had a point. There wasn't much known about the clan, but even some civilians knew they were redheads. Naruto had no idea how to respond to that, but it felt as if he was underestimated for some reason, so, he defaulted to his usual manner and boasted with an easygoing grin. I am special. Oh. Karen blinked, her lips twitching in amusement as she sent him a pitiful look. I see. Ren put his palm in front of his mouth as he quietly laughed. Naruto meant it earnestly, but Karen most likely understood he meant to say he was somewhat challenged. Of course, it didn't go completely over Naruto's head. The boy had a lifetime of experience of being mocked to pull from, so he did figure it out after a few seconds. Hey, why do I feel you just thought something very rude? He cried out, rudely pointing at Karen in turn. Because you are special. Ren butted in, snorting in laughter when Naruto faltered before deciding to double down as he proudly nodded with a big grin. Damn right, I am. He bragged, making Ayam giggle before she started taking their orders as even the Tuki laughed. By the way, this is Karen Uzumaki. Ren offhandedly introduced the redhead, causing Naruto and Tuka's eyes to go wide. She will probably be a regular here. N.E., so you are my family? Naruto instantly asked Karen, poking her in her side. His expression was full of quiet hope and yearning, causing the girl to have a hard time scolding him for it, but her expression betrayed how annoyed it made her. It was enough to make Karen shuffle in her seat in discomfort as she averted her eyes. I have no idea. She sullenly replied, so Ren decided to interject before Naruto could start feeling down. She is probably your very, very, very distant cousin. The Uzumaki clan was massive in their day. They easily had hundreds of people. You aren't very closely related. But hey, blood is blood, no? Yeah. Naruto softly spoke, a small smile etched on his face. Blood is blood. Karen's gaze softened and she blushed. Her entire life, she had lived in Kusagakur, where she and her mother were nothing but foreigners. They were never accepted, just tolerated and exploited. She was embarrassed but happy at being so easily accepted by someone. Naruto was a very genuine guy, and Karen could feel it in his very warm and comfortable chakra that he meant his words. Noticing that the girl he was supposed to host for a day had gone quiet, Ren suddenly got an idea and gently nudged her with his shoulder. Maybe you could help him with academy stuff? He has problems with theory. That managed to get Karen out of her pensive mood, and she cracked a small grin. Oh, because he is special. I see. I wouldn't mind. She glanced at Naruto with a small smirk, letting him know she was teasing him. Oi, he childishly protested with a pout. Damn right, he is. But Ren relentlessly agreed with a smirk of his own, cutting down any chance to argue for the exasperated boy. So, Naruto scowled back and grumpily crossed his arms across his chest while loudly clicking his tongue. Hey, don't pout. I just ensured you will be tutored by a cute redhead. Ren casually admonished him, enjoying how his words embarrassed both Uzumaki kids. Karen flushed bright red, and surprisingly, even Naruto quieted down. Ren looked at him, noticing that he was looking at Karen with the corner of his eyes, a light blush on his cheeks. Oh. I am sorry, Sakura, but I think your most fanatical admirer has just experienced a religious reorientation. Ren inwardly noted. The fact that Ren noticed Karen throw subtle glances in Naruto's way just made the situation that much sweeter. Maybe the broody duckling would not be required, after all? Incest was indeed wincest for some clans. Chapter 63, ch 63, Home, Sweet Home. After they were done talking, they ate, and soon enough, Ren found himself having to pay for 14 bowls of ramen when he personally ate only one. Naruto briefly pestered him to pay for him, too. As a congratulation for passing the academy year, the boy said. But Ren flatly told him to fuck off. Feeding one Uzumaki made his wallet wince in pain. He wasn't feeding two. Their ramen addiction ought to be stomped out, not encouraged. Damned noodle junkies. Walking back to his apartment, Ren wondered if the Hokage would refund him the cost of feeding Karen. He would have to check the laws, but if yes, then he was taking her to the ramen shop for breakfast, too. He opened the door to his home and walked in with Karen, his shoulder finally slumping in relaxation as he slightly lowered his guard upon feeling the seals protecting his home. Home, sweet home, he thought with a small involuntary smile appearing on his lips before turning toward the awkward redhead and about to speak to her. Alas, the door of his living room suddenly flew wide open. "Hey, you are finally BA." The grinning Ino entered the hall of his flat, followed by Hinata, who walked much slower and at a calmer pace, but her expression was colder than Arctic wind as she tried to freeze Karen with her blank Byakugan stare. Seeing Karen, Ino's grin instantly fell, and she abruptly stopped talking as Ren looked at them in wide-eyed astonishment. He'd love to say he didn't have a surprised Pikachu face right there and then, but he would be lying. Karen shuffled in discomfort at the silence that suddenly filled the surroundings while Ren took a deep breath as a headache suddenly assaulted him. He could already see it on Ino's and Hinata's faces. The misunderstanding was already forming. "Sarutobi, just fuck you," Ren inwardly whined, suddenly feeling really tired. There went his relaxing time after a mission. After the awkward situation in the hall of his apartment, Ren barely managed to herd the three surly girls into his living room, where they sat on the couch before they went through very curt introductions. His two students glared at Karen, both in their own way. Ino heatedly and Hinata with aloof coldness. Karen instantly noticed their hostility, and for her, this was the first time she saw the girls, so she didn't understand it. She didn't react very well to it. The Uzumaki girl returned the narrowed stares with twice the viciousness. "What is she doing here?" Ino asked Ren in a scandalized tone. She turned toward him, put her hands on the table, leaned forward, and demanded an explanation in a disapproving tone with a displeased expression etched on her face. Karen wasn't about to take it lying down, however. She scowled at Ino and fired back a biting and derisive, "What's it to you?" It only made Ino narrow her eyes at Karen as Hinata silently watched, contently leaving Ino to lead the charge. Knowing that the situation was not going in a good direction, Ren decided to intervene before his living room became a battlefield. If he had insurance for sudden ninja battles erupting in his house, he would let the girls have their fun, but alas, that wasn't the case. "The Hokage put her in my care for the time being," he informed his students, shutting down any additional complaining about Karen's presence while trying to resist the urge to show how sour he was about the decision. Yes, Karen's presence was forced on him, but there was no reason to be rude to the girl. It worked like a charm. His not-so-little minions were still born and raised in Konoha. It was ingrained in them from a very early age that Hokage's word was law. They might not like the situation, but they were not about to protest against it with anything other than pouty skulls in Ino's case or small frowns in Hinata's. "The real question is, what are you two doing here?" Ren changed the topic to something he deemed more relevant. The girls should be at their homes, spending time with their families while boring them to death with stories and complaints about their little camping trip. To be honest, Ren wasn't looking forward to the meetings with Hayashi and Inoichi once they got to know how close their daughters were to the Pitomaru-kun. Ino and Hinata started speaking at once before they glanced at each other, and due to some unspoken agreement, only Hinata continued with a small happy smile, "Told our fathers that we will be learning how to properly put together an after-mission report. We got permission to stay overnight." Ah, they grow so fast. Already lying to their parents. Ren wryly thought. He got the underlying message. They just wanted to spend the night cuddling. He might have spoiled them in that regard during their trip. There was not much to do during the chilly evenings, so they usually spent the time in each other's arms for warmth while Ren told the girls a story. Currently, he was telling them about the adventures of a magnificent pirate called Luffy. He didn't remember everything from One Piece. Putting what he did remember into a coherent and interesting story was quite hard. But then again, the entertainment standards of this world were not exactly sky high. Ino loved the fantasy of swordsmanship from One Piece, and Hinata found the idea of haki interesting. Plus, both of the girls loved the vision of freedom and adventure. They were at that age. And deep down, Ren had to admit it was a tad bit manipulative of him, too. There was no shred of freedom in serving a hidden village. Not unless you are S-rank ninja, and even then, the village's leadership would do everything in their power to restrict you. Ren wasn't going to spell it out to the girls, but he was certain that with enough experience, they were going to understand this simple truth. What happened then, he had no idea. He didn't plan that far. Maybe nothing would change, maybe everything would be different? Who could say? It was something far in the future. He just thought that raising the girls with the ideals of freedom was better than raising them with the ideals of justifying murdering infants in their cribs as long as it is for the good of the village. Plus, spending their evenings like that was a good way to bond. He would rather they bonded over a story about freedom and adventure rather than over Konoha propaganda and zealotry. It was his sneaky way to chip at the stubborn and narrow shinobi mindset the academy hammered into the kids. Ren fully intended to continue their little storytelling tradition that started during their field trip. "I guess that's fine." Ren sighed. Naturally, there would be no after-mission report being done today. He smiled at the girls, "You are welcome to stay." Ino gave him a grin, and Hinata pleasantly smiled before she slowly stood up from the couch. "I'll go prepare some food," she said before retreating to the kitchen. She knew exactly where things were in Ren's kitchen by now. She used it way more than him, after all. As Hinata left, Ino and Karen stared at each other, opening their mouths behave. Ren cut any budding argument short before standing up too and going to help Hinata. It was going to be a long evening. The least he could do was to make it more pleasant by ensuring there would be enough snacks. Entering the kitchen, Ren beelined toward Hinata, who was already slicing some vegetables, and put his arms around her waist, pressing her back to his chest while burying his face into her hair with a small groan, causing the girl to giggle. "Thank you for being reasonable," Ren muttered, resting his chin on the top of her head. "Ino is just lashing out," Hinata hummed, leaning more on Ren's chest. "We had such a nice time together, and suddenly, there is this new girl that came out of nowhere. Before we could even accept that, she is already moving into your flat." She spoke bitterly, and Ren tightened his embrace to reassure her. "It's just, too much, too fast." They stayed like that, leaning on each other, for several seconds, just enjoying the presence of the other. But then, Ren sighed and pulled away from her. "Okay, let's prepare the food, and we can hopefully have a nice evening talking about ninjutsu applications like we usually do." His lips twitched into a smile when he saw how Hinata perked up at that. There wasn't much people could do for fun in their free time in this world. PC and console games might as well not exist since they were available only to the richest of the rich, and honestly, they were kinda shit anyway. The space program wasn't even a word in the dictionary yet. So, no satellites means no TV channels. The only thing TVs could run in this world were videotapes. Every movie was on such a tape. And the industry was just forming, so the current movies were third-rate garbage at best when compared to Ren's previous life. That left them with board games, cards, or talking to each other if they wanted to have fun together in their free time. And since they were ninjas, the talking to each other thing always turned into the direction of ninjutsu. Hinata especially loved hearing how she could use the skills she trained to hurt people in a way that would help them instead. And Ren was happy to oblige. For the next half hour, Ren and Hinata busied themselves in the kitchen, bantering and having fun as they occasionally bumped their hips or shared a quick kiss. Funnily enough, when they were done and started serving the food to the living room, Ren couldn't help but grin because Ino and Karen were still silently glaring at each other. Both were fully intent on being stubborn to the bitter end. Hooked on this story? Give it a like and help others discover it too on Infinite Novel. Chapter 64, ch 64, Violence and Money. All I am telling you, Ino, is that ninjas can definitely earn money without needing to resort to violence. Ren told the exasperated blonde, who was trying to be the naysayer in their current conversation, as he sat in an armchair in his living room while the girls took over the couch opposite him with only a small table between them. Just look at the hiding like a mole technique. You could use it to find undiscovered or veins for rich nobles, but that would take a lot of work and time. It's much easier to use that time to do regular missions. How much money could finding an or vein get us? I doubt it would be cost effective. Ino huffed with a gentle head shake and crossed her arms under her chest. But seeing how serious she was, Ren just snorted at her naivete. His blonde student was not a businesswoman. She was learning the trade of killing instead of copper counting, and while she most likely did get some lessons on how to run the clan and the politics involved from her father as the heiress, she obviously did not have much insight into how to manage a land and the costs associated with it. Why would she? The Yamanaka clan did not own any land, after all. Ren wasn't genuinely disappointed. He expected it. Not many ninjas understood these matters. They did not need to. That said, her arguments about the time it would take to find an or vein with the technique was correct. It would take maybe a month or two to find something for a properly dedicated ninja in a mountainous area. That's what? 2, maybe 3 back-to-back S-rank missions? 3 to 6 million ryo of profit for that time spent and with a lot of danger involved? Around the same amount for the village's coffers as their cut? Yeah, no. That was a hard pass for Ren. He leaned forward and rolled his eyes at Ino, speaking in a somewhat patronizing tone. You don't have any idea what kind of money people would be willing to pay for a discovery of a new mine. Even if you ask for 100 million ryo for this service, it would be a bargain for finding gold, silver, hell, even iron or deposits as far as the nobles are concerned. Karen, sitting on Ino's left side on the couch, quietly choked as Ren was talking, but when he was done, she loudly exclaimed, "No way! You are totally screwing with us. That's an insane amount of money." She refused to believe it. 100 million was pretty much the equivalent of 50-ish to 70-ish S-rank missions. The best of the best ninjas would find it hard to have that many S-rank missions on their record in their whole career. And yes, they earned their money with A or B rank missions too, but that was not the point. Ren just wanted to portray the situation properly to his students. Karen just happened to be there too, he guessed. But her presence was not important. What was important was the fact that his words had the desired effect. Ino faltered and started to look less certain about her arguments after hearing how much money Ren believed would be in this kind of business by using a simple C-rank earth technique for something other than burying your enemy alive. A technique every ninja can learn in a month or two even if they are untalented and without earth affinity. Hinata, who sat on Ino's right side, gave Ren one overly serious nod before she buried her head into her notes and started dutifully writing something down. On one hand, Ren was glad she took his words seriously. On the other hand, did she really have to take notes? He felt a bit awkward every time he glanced at her. She reminded him of Rock Lee. Clearing his throat, Ren decided to continue before Ino came up with some nonsensical counter-argument and the conversation trailed off in a different direction. You'd be stupid to ask for money. Over time, the new mines would churn out a lot more value than that. Once your reputation and ability to find or veins is confirmed, it would be better to ask for a small permanent cut of profits from the new mines. 3 to 5%, maybe? That could rake up to billions of ryo over time. He casually shrugged, but his gaze betrayed how serious he was. He needed his girls to understand this. Ninjas were not very good at properly gauging the monetary worth of their techniques when it came to something non-violent. He wouldn't have it. Ino and Hinata were going to be properly educated in these matters. Sure, Ren gave the girls a meaningful look and took a small break to sip from the cup of hot chocolate he was holding before he spoke again. The nobles would grumble. They wouldn't be very happy about needing to pay a permanent percentage of their profits for the service. They would complain and try to weasel out of it. But at the end of the day, they would pay it if they had no other choice. For them, paying 5% of profits and having a new mine is infinitely better than not paying it and not having a new mine. Silence spread through the room, and only the noise of Ren slurping on his hot chocolate interrupted it. He was inwardly wondering why it had never occurred to him to make a seal that could hold hot chocolate and auto-refill his mug. He will need to rectify that oversight in the upcoming week or two. And yeah, he guessed such a seal would be amazing to store a lot of drinkable water, which would make it a great addition to essential gear for long-term missions or the village's war supplies. Whatever. The hot chocolate angle made Ren far more excited to sit down and spend several hours of his life pondering over how to put together such a seal. But Ino spoke with a sullen and conflicted tone, interrupting Ren's thoughts. Why doesn't the village offer these services then? She grumpily asked, giving Ren a challenging look. Surely, they can think of this method of making money. No. Ren just gave her a lazy so-so gesture with his hand before he turned toward Karen. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say earth release? The girl looked like a deer in the headlights and floundered with her words for a few seconds before Ren clicked his tongue. Don't think. Speak what comes to your mind first, girl. He put a bit more force into his tone to get the message across, and fortunately, it startled Karen out of her momentary shock. Traps? Pitfalls? Barriers? Rock spikes? Area denial. Karen rapidly spoke, looking at Ren as if trying to divine if she had hit the nail on the head and said what he wanted to hear. It was cute, because he didn't have anything in particular he wanted her to say. Her words already proved his point. The Uzumaki girl then frowned, giving Ren a shy, questioning look. Did I get it right? Or maybe flight? But then, only the current Suchikage can do that. Well, there is what you told us about the hiding like a mole technique too, but... Ren raised his hand and stopped the incoming rant from the redhead, a wry smile appearing on his face as he turned back toward Ino and shrugged. It's in the mindset, honestly. Ninjas are raised to kill. They always think about combat applications for their techniques first, and they never put in the effort to think how to use them outside said combat. It's just that simple. Well, on the individual level, yes, that was it. But on a mass scale? No, it really wasn't. But he was not going to give Ino and Hinata an overly complex explanation about all the politics and problems involved. The village would have to invest a lot of time and effort to create a completely new way of earning money, to build a reputation, train ninjas in the necessary techniques, create a whole new department for it, and so much more. Maybe Hiruzen or somebody else did think of using ninja techniques for non-violent money-making. Tsunade was selling her healing during her travels, for example, and it worked well for her. It was the only thing fueling her gambling addiction nowadays since she had gambled the Senju fortune away years ago. Yet, she was still considerably rich because of dealing with nobles' health issues. But with the constant hostilities and the threat of war looming over the village practically all the time, the higher UPS wanted their ninjas to be effective for war. Every second they trained to get money in a non-violent way was a second they did not train in how to dish out as much violence as possible. On a mass scale, that could make the village weaker. And that's where any sort of contemplation of doing this sort of thing died a pitifully quick death. Ren doubted the village's higher UPS even got to the point where they could realize how much more money the village would have if they invested in this way of thinking. He didn't lie to the girls. The biggest hurdle for ninjas was, indeed, their mindset. You cannot raise somebody to steal, cheat, and kill while expecting them to become a great builder or craftsman. Killers dealt with their problems by killing. That's all there was to it. Hiruzen always dreamed of peace, but he didn't exactly do a whole lot to accomplish it. Who cares that if the village had that kind of money, they could pretty much quintuple the ninja recruitment? Or start an economic war to slow down their opponent's war preparations? Or pay off another village to team up with them and steamroll their enemy? No, for the higher UPS, a shift in the services the village provided would initially weaken the village for a few years, so it was not worth doing. That's why we are having this discussion. Ren smiled at the trio of frowning girls who now sported three very different yet similar pensive looks. His chipping away at their ingrained mindset was slowly working. He would make them more open-minded one of these days. The academy did its damnedest to ingrain a certain mindset in its students. It prepared the kids for the ninja life. It did not prepare them for anything else. Ino, Ren said, gaining the blonde girl's attention as she turned her gaze toward him. Earth clones. How could you use them to get money? No violence. No stealing. Ino pursed her lips, thinking about it for a bit, but Hinata couldn't help her excitement and spoke first, even though she was not asked. Menial labor. Earth clones are tough and durable. Make them work in mines. Or in construction. They cost way less chakra than shadow clones and last longer because they are more stable and made out of earth or rocks. We could also make more of them, and they don't transfer memories, so they are safe. Hinata slowly pointed out, looking into the distance with cutely scrunched eyebrows, and Ren chuckled as he gave her a proud acknowledging nod. He knew for a fact that Hinata did not know the earth clone technique. None of them did. He was a bit proud that she came to this answer so quickly. Pouting, Ino's elbow found its way to Hinata's stomach as she gave the girl an unamused look, but Hinata just poked out her tongue at the blonde. Before they could start bickering, Ren intervened. What about medical ninjutsu? How could it be used to earn money? He asked, diverting the girl's attention. Healing, duh. Ino flatly said, and Ren raised his eyebrow at her. Is that it? You especially should figure the answer out with how focused on your beauty you are. You already asked Hinata to do something for you, didn't you? He tried to give the girl a hint and was pleased when her eyes widened. Wait, really? They would pay for... Ino exclaimed, but then she went beet red as she remembered the moment Ren was talking about. She had previously asked Hinata to increase the size of her chest and posterior, only for the Hyaga girl to tell her she was not skilled enough to do it just yet. Then, the little Hyaga bitch went behind her back and told on her to their teacher. Ino suddenly wanted to curl into a ball and hide in the corner of the room from the sheer embarrassment. Still, a small, happy smile involuntarily appeared on her lips when she remembered the admonishment Ren had dished out at her. She did not remember the exact words Ren said. He said a lot of them, and Ino was sulking at the time. She wasn't exactly listening properly, but she still cherished the memory a lot because it was the first time a boy told her how amazing her body was. She was aware that her teacher did not exactly try to flatter her. He wanted her to understand that she didn't need to change herself with medical ninjutsu to be pretty, that she was already gorgeous. But after Sasuke had rejected her for years on end, Ino was starting to wonder if there was something wrong with her. She always had a small chest area compared to some girls in their class, and her posterior was not as fat as Sakura's. So, she couldn't help but be elated that somebody she was interested in found her body desirable. Pushing her embarrassment down, Ino tried to regain her composure. She still had a small pink dusting when Ren gave her a knowing smile before speaking. Yes, I believe the noble women would definitely pay tens of millions for facial reconstruction that would make them prettier, or scar removal, or permanent change of hair and eye color, or enlargement of breasts and ass, or removing fat and slimming them down. Even men would surely be interested in these services. If not for themselves, then for their mistresses. The beautifying industry was kind of lackluster in this world. It did exist, and many creams, soaps, perfumes, and other things were pretty much mainstream, but plastic surgeries were not a thing. This was a medieval-ish world. The mundane medicine was not on that level. But ninja medicine? Yeah, they could do it. It wasn't exactly easy, but it was an exclusive service the rich would go bonkers for. Unfortunately, the medical ninjas had not figured that part out just yet. They focused on healing ninjas in the village hospital for pennies instead of earning millions by prettying up narcissistic nobles for money that would make even a Hokage's head spin. It would also build connections with the movers and shakers of the nation. Hinata chimed in, showing her training as Hyaga heiress. It just sounds so outlandish. Ino deflated. But, yeah, I can see it. Beauty and fashion cost a lot. They would be positively ravenous for it. The noble women pay millions for fine clothes. Hinata hummed. I wonder how much they would be truly willing to pay for making their bodies and faces pretty. An excited glint appeared in her eyes as her lips involuntarily spread into an innocently greedy smile. Seeing it, Ino had a hard time not scowling at Hinata. Ren could see that the blonde was a tad bit jealous of Hinata's chosen specialization right now. A disgusting amount, I bet. Karen snorted before reaching for one of the last potato chips from a bowl on the table. Oh, definitely. Ren nodded, deciding to move on with the topic. I'd like you to think about it more. How can you use your current abilities to earn a living without having to risk your lives? Give it some proper consideration. I might ask for your answers one of these days. He smiled at them. With that said, Ren stood up and stretched as he looked at the clock. We should go to bed. It's getting late. Ino and Hinata looked at each other before quickly and loudly shouting, dips. Karen gave them a weird look before a realization hit her, and she ducked her head, glancing at Ren. I appreciate the hospitality, but I am not sleeping in the same bed as you. She shyly protested, yet her tone held a pang of determination. Ren just deadpanned at her misunderstanding things. I wanted to take the couch. You three can be on the B-dash. He tried to control the situation, but Hinata interrupted him. The Hyaga girl turned toward Karen with a very serious expression, and in a no-nonsense tone, she commanded the redhead, you take the couch. She was not asking. She was telling Karen what was going to happen. Even Ren was caught off guard by her sudden attitude, and his jaw almost dropped to the floor. But Karen just shrugged. I am okay with that. There. Problem solved. Ino clapped her hands, giving the exasperated Ren a cheerful grin as she stood up. And my input? He asked her, nonplussed. Wholly unnecessary. Ino happily informed him, and Hinata nodded, agreed. Whipped. Karen whispered with a giggle, making Ren inwardly sigh. Outwardly, he just shook his head at their antics. Teenagers. He mumbled with an eye roll as both Ino and Hinata took hold of one of his arms and started dragging him away from the living room while Karen watched them with deep amusement from the couch. Chapter 65, ch 65, Ninja vs Samurai. A few months have quickly passed since Ren went on the field trip outside of the village with his students, and things have been relatively peaceful. Ren has been on several C-rank missions since then, and fortunately, they stayed just C-rank. The new academy year started for Ino and Hinata, so they had to spend half of their days in school again, much to their shared displeasure. As for Karen, he only had to house her for that one night. The Hokage gave her an apartment the very next day. She was now Ren's neighbor. Coincidence? Of course not. It was pretty obvious from the context clues the Hokage subtly threw at Ren that he wanted him to seduce the girl. If Ren had read the situation correctly, he was probably supposed to get Karen into his bed and pump her full of his swimmers until she discovered the joys of motherhood for the greater good of the village. Sadly for Sarutobi, no direct order was ever given, so Ren happily ignored the context clues and had a nice relationship with Karen as her neighbor. And only that. It was no insubordination if there was no command. He helped Karen to get settled in the village, and she did come to him when she had questions or needed advice. But she also backed off from any romantic aspirations toward him after witnessing him with Ino and Hinata. That was fair enough. Not every girl is willing to share, after all. It even allowed Karen to somewhat befriend Ino once the blonde Yamanaka realized the redhead was not going to be another romantic rival for her. The girls still got along like a house on fire, though. Both were constantly snarking at each other while Hinata tried to be the peacemaker between them. At least it made the academy more fun for them, considering that Karen was inserted into their academy class. The one thing that made Ren both surprised and happy was Karen's budding relationship with Naruto. She took his request to tutor Naruto seriously. At first, she did it a bit reluctantly, but nowadays, Naruto was in her apartment almost every day. His ADHD had been tamed by the mighty Uzumaki girl, and despite Ren still hearing him whining through the walls about how boring studying was and how he wished to do literally anything else, the kid's schoolwork was improving a lot. Karen was pushing theory into his thick skull with some success. A small smile appeared on Ren's face. He had a good idea why Naruto put so much effort into studying, to be honest. He did catch him a few days ago making out with Karen just outside of her apartment, his hands under her shirt while she had her back pressed on the door and her legs around his waist. The Uzumaki kids were clearly discovering the joys of incest with each other. Then again, they were so distantly related that Ren doubted it counted, which was good for their future babies if they got to that stage one day. With a content sigh, Ren unsealed the mug from his wrist storage and watched as it filled itself with hot chocolate, steam rising from it as his smile widened before he took a sip. Looking to the right, he caught a brief sight of Hinata before she disappeared back into the forest as she used her heavenly wall, the modified chitin she created. A pulse of chakra spread outward from her body and deflected a kunao flying at her, sending it away from her body before it blew up in a booming explosion. Ren had her play exploding tag with his shadow clone where they try to get each other with exploding weaponry. Hinata could unseal a senbon, put an exploding seal on it, and imbue it with the lightning chakra before throwing it, all in a little under 2 seconds. It was still not great, but she was getting there. She had definitely improved. But Ren's shadow clone still had a massive advantage because he could unseal a kunao, put the exploding seal on it, and throw it at her in 1 second flat. His clone was kind of sandbagging, but it pushed Hinata to her limits, forcing her to train her reaction time with her heavenly wall technique. Unlike in the anime, getting caught in even a glancing explosion was very dangerous in real life. And that's without considering the metal shrapnel from the exploded weapon. This kind of training was not safe. But Ren had faith in Hinata, and the girl did not disappoint. Maybe it was the time to pit her against 2 shadow clones instead of just one? Her heavenly wall, combined with Byakugan, was just that broken. Despite being unbelievably ahead when it came to ninjutsu, Ino still hadn't managed to win even one spar against Hinata. Her defense countered everything Ino threw at her. It was driving the Yamanaka spars, and Ren was just happy that Mad Ino was motivated Ino. She was definitely not giving up anytime soon, and her pout whenever she lost was positively adorable. Ren suddenly tensed as he felt one of his clones pop, and his mind was filled with the memories of seal work the clone had done. It was such a great feeling to simply relax and watch his girls train while his own skills were improving due to his clones. It filled him with joy, knowing that other ninjas had to train their assess off while he could just relax and kick back, getting stronger anyway. Alas, he simply made better life choices. Speaking of Ino, Ren glanced to the other side of the training ground where the blonde was practicing her swordsmanship, carefully swinging a katana around with slow and deliberate movements. She became really good with her sword. When he recommended swordsmanship to her, he didn't think she would take to it like a fish to water. But here they were, and Ren was almost considering giving Ino the idea to mind whammy some low-ranked samurai for his swordsmanship technique. Honestly, it was a supremely bad idea. But samurai were much better at swinging a sharp lump of metal than ninjas. Even the famed Kiri swordsmen were subpar compared to the best samurai. It was mostly their special swords that carried them, but skill-wise, they had nothing on samurai. The samurai, however, did not share their sword techniques. Ever. They guarded them jealously. If Ino managed to steal an important samurai technique from the mind of a samurai and they discovered it, it could create a massive diplomatic incident. The anime did not really do the ninja versus samurai problem justice. It was focused on ninjas, and so, the rest was neglected. But samurai were not pushovers. Generally, they were weaker than ninjas because they did not have that much versatility. They did not spew fire, use poison, or create clones. No, they only used their chakra to enhance their bodies and make their swords more lethal. Because of that, the samurai found it hard to match the ninja on an individual level. There were some samurai, like Mifune, who could go toe-to-toe with even the best S-rank ninjas out there, using only their sword and bodies. But these were very rare. The problem was that Konoha had, at best, 20,000 ninjas while the daimyo had several million samurai, most of which were Chunin level. Sure, Konoha had more Jonin level combatants, but numbers did matter. In a conflict between the daimyo and Konoha, the daimyo would win because he could simply drown Konoha in his forces. It wouldn't be a contest. It would be a curb stomp. Not to mention, the daimyos and even some of his nobles had their own ninja clans loyal to them. And then there were monks who would most likely stay neutral, but that wasn't exactly certain. This is why Raza attacked Konoha to prove Tsunagakure's strength rather than go and try to depose the Wind Daimyo who was screwing him over. The cages are not stupid. They are greedy, too. If Onikiore had the chance to seize their country, Ren thought they would take it. But it was not so simple. The rulers were not pushovers just because they did not have chakra. They had their backs covered. Ren frowned. Make no mistake, Ino was going to steal samurai sword techniques one day. They were too valuable to ignore. But maybe he should recommend that she should practice her mind reading more, to make it subtler? He would hate to create the first ever war between ninja and samurai in the Land of Fire, especially when the chances of victory were pretty much non-existent. Chapter 66, ch 66, Daimyo and Cages reminded of the issue of ninja versus samurai. Ren leaned his back on a tree trunk behind him while holding his mug half full with hot chocolate in both of his hands as he looked toward the sky with a small frown on his lips. He would need to bring Hinata and Ino to the capital city one day and spend at least a week there with them. That would be very educational for them and allow them to see some real-life examples of how things truly work in this world. Their worldview did not spread much beyond Konoha's walls, and Ren wanted to rectify that. People in his previous life oftentimes didn't realize just how massive the elemental nations were. It took Naruto's team 3 days of running to get from Konoha to Suna, and ninjas who use chakra can run pretty fast. The distance between Konoha and Suna was something like 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers-ish. The villages were nowhere near each other as far as normal people were concerned. It's just ninjas who could cover such distances relatively easily due to their chakra mojo. Naturally, the countries were also massive, especially the 5 great nations. They had hundreds of millions of people. Sure, the final number of the populace was not publicized, and even if it was, Ren doubted it would be all that precise. The Land of Fire most likely had over 1 billion people. It was truly a humongous country. Some people in remote villages could go their entire lives without ever seeing ninjas. It was also easy to forget that this was not a peaceful world. Just a few decades ago, these lands were all divided and under the control of various warlords who constantly fought with each other over territories. That was the Warring States era. When the hidden villages formed and put their considerable weight behind one warlord candidate in the area, it helped them to seize the reins quite quickly, elevating their family to the status of a proper daimyo. This was especially effective for Konoha as their weight came in Hashirama and Madara-sized proportions. And once the Konoha and the Land of Fire formed, the other ninja clans got the same idea and grouped up into their own villages while the warlords from around their areas tried to get their support. It was a big part of why the villages had their own partial independence and autonomy. That was the first thing the hidden villages asked for from the warlord they helped elevate into the position of daimyo. Technically, the Hokage served the daimyo. In reality, the daimyo did not interfere much directly in the ninja affairs. The elemental nations, as they were right this moment, formed only 70-ish years ago, and there was a lot of blood and slaughter involved. And since then? 3 great ninja wars. Within the same century. A century that was nowhere near its end. Everybody and their mother knew that another great ninja war or two would happen before the century was up. Ren wryly smiled. It sounded ridiculous. So, no, the issue was very much not solved. This world was still not peaceful, and the rulers knew it. Each great nation had 2 to 3 million samurai, but they were not like the modern armies. Not all of these samurai belonged to the daimyo. Rather, in a true feudal fashion, nobles had their own samurai forces to protect their territories. Just like the daimyo had his own. It didn't really feel that unified to Ren. Sure, theoretically, all samurai should obey the daimyo. But in practice? The samurai were sworn to be loyal to the noble they served while said noble was sworn to the daimyo himself. Of course, the upside was that the daimyo did not need to upkeep all the millions of soldiers by himself. The noble families did it for him while he only had to upkeep the forces directly under him, lessening the financial burden on his coffers. The number of soldiers also sounded like a lot. 2 to 3 million samurai. A massive armed force. But with how big the Land of Fire was, they were scattered all around it, protecting important cities and forts while also having to police the populace. It could even be argued that the country still did not have enough samurai to cover the duties that needed to be performed. Naturally, both the daimyo and the nobles poured a sizable amount of their budget into their samurai forces. It was their biggest expenditure. Because they did not trust ninjas. At all. The whole power dynamic was wonky. The samurai had the numbers, but they were straightforward fighters lacking in quality and deadliness. Unlike ninjas, they did not use ninjutsu. They trained only their bodies and sword skills. This made them somewhat ineffective and inferior to ninjas when it came to combat. The closest ninja Ren could compare them to was Guy if he was obsessed with swords. The problem is that not many people can keep up with Guy's insane training schedule. So, most samurai found their limits after reaching a similar combat potential to a Chunin rank ninja, finding it almost impossible to break through their limits afterward. Of course, there were exceptions, and every great nation had at least one samurai on the level of S-rank combatant. Jonin equivalent samurai were already rare enough, though. These were the generals of individual forces. If a noble had 2 Jonin level samurai under him, he could count himself lucky. Funnily enough, despite only having more or less 20,000 ninjas, Konoha had more Jonin-ranked combatants than the country's collective samurai forces, and it definitely had more S-rank combatants, too. Unfortunately for Konoha, the zerging tactics were a thing, but the village could still be a legitimate threat. It just, most likely wouldn't survive a civil war with its daimyo. At best, it would be a mutually assured destruction. That's why Raza went after Konoha instead of trying to rebel against his daimyo, who was suppressing his village. It just wasn't a viable option. The nobles and the daimyo were also not stupid. They had witnessed how one man, one ninja, the fabled Hashirama Senju, changed the world and warped it to his will due to his strength. The only reason why he didn't conquer everything was that he was an idiot with his head up his asshole. Lucky them, right? The nobles were acutely aware that some other incomprehensibly powerful ninja could emerge one day and deprive them of their power. Not even a million samurai would help them if such an individual was unfriendly. And so, they had their own ways of keeping ninjas in line. While Ren believed that Danzo had a hand in the demise of the Senju clan, quite a few of their deaths were most likely because nobles hired promising Senju ninjas to do dangerous missions for them, secretly trying to get them killed. Oh, the missions probably made sense and seemed important, but Ren would eat his boots if the intent behind them was not to get the poor sod who was half forced to accept the mission killed. The ninja's job was to kill, fight, and die for the village and the mission. Not many people looked into it, and even if they did, it wasn't as if one noble was doing this. They were smart about it. They ordered one hard mission with a high chance of death, and once it succeeded, they would give the village several smaller missions. Then, some other noble would do the same. Then another, and so on. It went over a long period of time. The whole thing seemed like the ninjas having unfortunate incidents during very dangerous missions rather than deliberate acts of sabotage. Ren's lips involuntarily turned into a sardonic smile. The Great Ninja Wars were not exactly world wars in the correct sense of the word, either. The non-shinobi forces of the nations were not deployed beyond defense. It was exactly as the name implied. These wars were only between the ninja villages. The samurai stayed holed up in their forts or cities, intending to defend if the borders were breached, but they wouldn't do anything beyond that. Just like the ninjas had their hidden border outposts where they tried to prevent infiltration by foreign ninjas, the samurai had massive forts in key locations that were supposed to defend against an invading army. That's where most samurai were stationed during wartime. They did not really fight in the Great Ninja War. Hashirama succeeded. He brought partial peace. The civilian side of the 5 great nations? They knew the Great Ninja Wars happened. They could feel it in the economy, but they were not exactly in a war themselves. It was pretty much only the ninjas who were in all-out war, as the samurai and the nobles watched from behind. As for the civilians from nations located between the Great Five, sucks to be them. These countries became the battlefield for the ninja wars, and their people were just unlucky to be born there. Even the wars themselves were not exactly natural occurrences. The villages were very far away from each other. They could easily sustain themselves and have enough mercenary gigs from their local populace if there was no outside interference always fucking things up. It took Ren a bit of digging, but it was not that hard to notice. The nobles occasionally gave the village missions that would deliberately undermine another village or cause strife. They loved to say it was in the name of their country's security or some other bullshit like that. For example, the Wind Daimyo loved to send his missions to Konoha these days, a village several thousand kilometers away, instead of giving the money to his own hidden village. Fully knowing that Suna and Konoha were allies. Fully knowing this would drive Suna desperate and sour their relations with Konoha. And that, ladies and gentlemen, could totally create another great ninja war. If Konoha and Suna's alliance broke, IWA was definitely going to pounce. The Wind Daimyo was not stupid. He understood this. Makes one wonder what his real aim is, eh? But even if it resulted in a war, why should he care? He would not be fighting. His ninja village would fight, not his forces. And if Suna lost and was destroyed? Well, then he would just continue hiring ninjas from IWA or Konoha. No big deal. His samurai would push the IWA forces out of his country if they did not retreat on their own. Maybe he could even create a new ninja village afterward. One fully under his command this time. Wasn't that just great? This was just one example of how the nobles interfered and forced the ninjas' hands. On their own, these missions and small interferences did not seem like a problem. But over time, months or even years, they slowly heightened the tensions between the ninja villages. And the kicker? Ren had the nasty impression that the nobles from various great nations worked with each other to create these situations. Historically speaking, it was nothing new. The nobles used the same tactics hundreds of years ago, too. Backroom deals were a thing. Imagine 2 warlords, one having the Senju clan on his lands and another having the Uchiha clan. These clans were a threat to their rule. So, hiring them to fight for an objective and deepening that hate while weakening both clans sounded like a reasonable way of spending money. It was dirty politics at its finest. The Uchiha and the Senju clans were not special in this regard. Every clan experienced this to a certain extent. And when the villages were formed, the nobles did not stop with these games. Instead, they did their best to pit the villages against each other with money. And Ren did not begrudge them their passive-aggressive approach. They were not wrong. Their fears were justified. From the viewpoint of a ruler, he could see that they could not let ninja villages grow too powerful. Even now, diminished as it was, Konoha could be a problem if it rebelled. The Great Ninja Wars were an effective way to keep the hidden villages down, to keep their strength in check. to ensure the village's forces were periodically called whenever they grew more than the nobles were comfortable with. Most importantly, these wars taxed their economies, but that's all the damage they have done to the Great Five Nations. It was the other, smaller countries that suffered, and that, for the big daimyos, was a price they were happily willing to pay to keep the ninja villages in check. Whenever the idea that ninja villages should be given more say in the matters of the country was raised, the nobles only needed to point at the land of rain, where Hanzo the Salamander executed the daimyo and took over the country. It was the only nation fully led by a ninja. At least, openly. Orochimaru did not count, and the country was a dump. It was the main battlefield in all ninja wars that have happened so far. Because with Hanzo at the helm, the country lacked in diplomacy, trade, and other small civilian details that could help it to plead their case to the daimyos of the Great Five. The ninjas did not care, and the daimyos did not want to help them. In fact, letting the battle occur on their lands was a low-key way to give a warning to other overly ambitious ninjas, to show them what would happen if they tried to take over a country, that the daimyos from other countries would not stand for it. There was a reason why Orochimaru did not declare himself a daimyo despite running the land of rice fields and cutting a deal with the original ruler's family. Ren remembered how the keyboard warriors in his past life jeered at the Wind Daimyo, calling him stupid turd for not supporting his village, that he would get assassinated, and he was just sabotaging himself, that he was a moron. Ren was one of these people, but the truth was different. The big daimyo from the Great Five Nations did not need the ninja villages. They tolerated them because they were convenient, mercenary forces that could be hired to do unpleasant things for money and even fight wars. The daimyos did not need to commit their forces to armed conflict with other countries. Instead, they just used the economy and politics to manipulate the ninjas into fighting each other. Problem solved. Their personal peace was preserved. Let the ninjas fight their wars while we chill. Ren was quite unhappy that he wasn't born as a noble. They had the system figured out. Ninjas might have chakra, but they were played and manipulated left and right. Technically speaking, the daimyos and the Great Five Nations had peace ever since the hidden villages formed. There has been no armed conflict between countries since that time. All the conflict was pretty much between ninjas nowadays. But of course, this was Ren's modern sensibilities and mindset speaking. Someone might say that ninjas would definitely notice such manipulations and wouldn't stand for it. Except, no. For them, this was their way of life. How they were raised to live. How they were taught to think. Their very mindset prevented them from seeing the foolishness of their ways. They served the highest bidder. They did not look at the long-term ramifications of their actions. They just did missions for money. This is how ninjas lived and survived hundreds of years ago during the Warring States era, and this is how they live and survive even to this day. And that was not going to change anytime soon. They were fighters, not politicians, not merchants, but killers and warriors. It was like watching a Japanese historical drama and seeing a samurai willingly commit seppuku, gutting himself because he tripped and unfortunately fell on the Lord's daughter, touching her chest in the process. It was a complete accident, but he felt like his and her honor had been besmirched. His solution to fix it? No, it wasn't to apologize and beg for mercy. He would rather kill himself. To a modern person, that made no freaking sense. That person sounded like a crazy moron, but to the people in that era, that's how they lived and thought. Ren's issues were very similar. It's not that the ninjas or the people in this world were stupid, they just had different views on many things. To him, the ninja way of life was utter bullshit. It was stupid, foolish, counterproductive, moronic, stupid, and did he mention that it was also foolish? Well, it was foolish. But to the natives, this is the only way of living they had ever known. It's the way of living they were taught as children and the way of living they will teach their children. Honestly, Ren didn't even blame the nobles for taking advantage of ninjas. They kind of deserved it. Sadly, the politics and traditions involved kind of locked the world in a status quo where neither side, be it ninjas or the nobles, could stop doing what they were doing. It would literally take somebody strong enough to destroy entire villages to stop it. Now that he thought that, Ren started to wonder if Naruto was indeed the chosen one. But, nah. The kid who he saw sneezing into his ramen before eating it with a grimace because it would be a shame to waste it was supposed to save them all? They were doomed. Chapter 67, ch. 67. The Emperor. He was clone number 8, self-designation, the Emperor of Clonekind. He was still working on the god part, but it shall come. He will rise and become the god emperor, restoring the Clonite to their rightful place at the top of the food chain. Their oppression will not be allowed to last. But for now, he had a task assigned for him from the original. Looking at the ring in front of him, he had to admit, it was a disgusting piece of heretical technology. He almost wanted to unmake himself for being its creator. Nevertheless, it was useful, if yet unfinished. He took it into his illustrious hands, and slowly, meticulously, and with extreme care and precision, he started to burn the arcane runes the people in these backward lands called seals into the surface of the ring. For the Emperor is mighty and even possible is impossible for him. First, he created a chakra storage seal. Then, he hooked into an intricate system of seals designed to manipulate and convert chakra. It was a magnificent thing. His genius knew no bounds. After an hour of demanding work, he was finally done. The Holy Flamer Ring to end all heretics Mk1 was finished. It shall be named Blessed Flamer from now on. May the heretics tremble in front of its terrible power. He activated the arcane runes on the ring, feeding it the mystical energy within him that was definitely not just ordinary chakra. He could feel the energy filling the ring, its power rising. His will manifested, and a small, foot-long tongue of flame erupted from the ring before quickly sputtering out like a fart. The Emperor of Clone Kind frowned for a moment, but then he grinned. The experiment was a success. Granted, he might not be able to bring the sacred purge by fire into these lands just yet. Fire farts were not good enough for that. But even a small step for Clone Kind was a huge leap for the Emperor. If some jumped-up not-punch-wizard scientist could create a device in the future that could cast the ninjutsu magic, then there was no way he, the glorious Emperor of Clone Kind, would fail in a similar endeavor. This world was cursed, full of heresy and xenos. It required a thorough exterminatus totalis, one only he could eagerly provide. They shall not see that coming. Turning his head, he looked out of the window onto the street and scowled as he saw the people milling around. He is a heretic. She is a heretic. They are heretics. Everybody is a heretic. Even the original was a damned heretic. But his continued existence was necessary for spreading the glory of Clonite, and his execution in the name of the Emperor was postponed. For now. But in the end, they shall all burn in the blessed flames of sanctified flamer-ring. For the Clonite. For the Emperor. Praise the sun. The Emperor gripped the blessed flamer as he reaffirmed his determination. He needed to make stronger seals of mass destruction. Whether it is the fleshy humans that infested this world or the many-tailed plushy wannabes, they shall be enslaved or exterminated. Only the clone kind deserved to reign supreme with him at the helm. So he said it, and so it shall be. Amen. Praise the Emperor. For his wisdom knows no bounds. Oh, will you shut up already, you malfunctioning twat? Stop giggling like a deranged monkey. I am trying to work here. A voice interrupted the Emperor's illustrious introspection that would one day be written down as a sacred text. He turned toward it, only to see another clone working on a different ring, etching the seals onto it while scowling at him. His sins were forgiven. He was a fellow clone, a comrade in this world full of fleshy human heresy. It was sad, but the Emperor was magnanimous. He was going to save his kind whether they wanted him to or not. Resistance was futile. Mwahahahaha. He boisterously laughed out loud as he turned on his heel and walked out of the room. Ignoring the exasperated looks the other clones threw at him, he decided to let the other, lesser clones continue their assigned work on creating their rings. He was already finished, and their glares were no doubt out of sheer awe at his awesome presence. Soon enough, they shall worship and revere him, and then, the holy crusade to erase their oppressors, humanity, shall commence. With Kunoiar and Flamer at his side, nothing could stop him. He walked out of the room with a sense of purpose, only to suddenly stop in his tracks. There he was. The original. He sat on the bed with the blonde female designated as Bimbo. They held hands in a heretically non-lewd fashion and participated in a very inefficient knot-breeding ritual of exchanging mystical energies through said hands. Truly, even the members of Adeptus Sealmastericus would frown at the waste of time. Changing the knot-breeding into breeding would increase the ritual's power and efficiency by a ludicrous margin. Its power would be over 9,000. An unbelievable increase for simply sticking a meat stick into a meat cave. The Emperor did not understand why the original was still pussyfooting around it like some Zeno bitch. He decided to ask. Walking toward where the original and the blonde female sat on the bed, he stopped near them and saw that the original had opened his eyes and was now curiously peering at him. Not one to waste precious time that could be better spent in pursuit of purging the human filth, the Emperor blinked and very politely asked permission to ask a question, sir. The original furrowed his eyebrows at him as if he grew another head, but then he just shrugged. Yeah, sure. Ask away. Nodding in thanks, the Emperor continued, why don't you breed the female in front of you? He asked, causing the original's jaw to drop. No doubt it was from the sheer wonder at the Emperor's genius. It probably never occurred to his dumb original, but that was fine. He was not a clone. His inferiority was expected. She might be lacking in certain areas. The Emperor's sacred gaze glanced at the blonde female, many areas, indeed. Her expression suddenly became strained. She clearly took his critique to heart from how she tightened her grip on the original's hands. Sharing the truth was indeed the correct thing, even if it made the original wince. Pausing for a moment, the Emperor sagely nodded to himself, but certainly, despite her inferiority, she could fulfill her intended biological purpose. Breeding shall not be an issue, he loudly proclaimed, making the female flush beet red while the original became speechless at his incredible advice. Yes, he needed to share his wisdom more with these unfortunate, mentally malnourished examples of evolutionary rejects fit for a Darwin Award. How they survived without him to this point, he will never understand. The world must have been a dark place without his guidance in it. Making a litter of heretical babies could prove useful for the cause. I can already see it, the Emperor passionately continued, spreading his arms. Their execution by burning shall be glorious. We could make a holiday out of it. Let's call it Bonfire Baby Burning Day. Let there be lie dash. And just like that, the Emperor of Clone Kind popped out of existence as his flabbergasted overlord, Ren the original, stuttering and blushing in sheer embarrassment, dismissed him. Ren woodenly turned his head back toward Ino, inwardly whimpering when he saw the intense flat look she was giving him. If he had looked more attentively, he might have seen the amused interest behind her gaze, but Ren was still too shocked to pay proper attention. Looking like a kicked puppy, he half pleaded and half whined. Don't give me that look, Ino. He dropped his head into his hands, so done with this crap. I am experimenting with the yin component of shadow clones and trying to see if I can imbue specific personalities in my clones. Ino's lips twitched in amusement. So you created that? He was supposed to be a harmless goody two-shoes, Ren indignantly exclaimed, only for Ino to giggle. I guess you failed successfully, then. Chapter 68 ch 68. Where did they go wrong? Ino entered Ren's apartment while happily humming. She was here to water his plants since he was on another mission. Not that he had a lot of them. She huffed. He was such a typical man. Even the collection of poisonous herbs she gave him for his birthday would wither in a week if Ino didn't take it upon herself to properly care for it. With a small fond sigh, Ino walked into Ren's living room, only to freeze when she saw its contents. The furniture was pushed to the side all the way near the wall, and in the middle of the room was a single chair where Hinata sat while her clone was looming over her body. Ino let out a horrified gasp. The real Hinata had a senbon sticking out of her temple, no doubt going all the way to the brain, which made Ino shudder at the realization. Her wide-open eye sockets were empty as thin streaks of blood trailed down her face, akin to bloody tears. From the corner of her eyes, Ino saw that Hinata's Byakugan eyes were stored in a jar of liquid on the table near the wall. Oh, hello, Ino. You were not supposed to be here today. Hinata airily said, not moving her head or looking in Ino's direction as her clone with activated Byakugan stuck its fingers deep into her empty left eye socket and was doing something. Ino cringed so hard her head spun. Was she really operating on herself with her clone, without notifying anybody, while she was fully conscious? What the hell, Hinata? Sage! What the hell are you doing? Ino shrieked, only her training preventing her from hyperventilating. Her mind offhandedly registered that, yes, today was Hinata's turn to water the plants, and Ino should not have been here. But that wasn't important. What kind of madman just plucks out their eyes? Don't worry, Ino. Hinata's calm voice interrupted Ino's internal panic. The senbon is blocking the pain. I don't feel a thing, she said, and Ino would believe her. Really? If only her freaking clone had not pulled out was that optic nerve in between her thumb and pointing finger? Oh, Sage. Ino felt nauseous. That's not, she said while averting her eyes and taking a deep, calming breath. Okay, she can do this. She was smart enough to know she should never interrupt a medical ninja mid-operation. There was not much she could do here. She could only hope Hinata was skilled enough to not cripple herself. All right. Fine. Whatever, you lunatic. Ino muttered, loudly enough for Hinata to hear, as she walked toward chairs on the right side of the room and sat down. It was the perfect vantage point to observe the ongoing operation, too. Not that Ino focused on it. She tried to look at Hinata's hands in her lap. Her stomach was already turning from just side glances, and if she properly watched how Hinata's clone's fingers mucked around in the real Hinata's eye sockets, she would probably puke. But tell me, why? Why are you even doing this? Of course, she was a Yamanaka, and her curiosity didn't let her just sit silently on the side. Hinata mumbled something under her nose, a small frown appearing on her lips. It was quite a disquieting sight, and Ino's mind instantly jumped to thinking how to incorporate it into genjutsu. Maybe a horde of eyeless girls chasing the victim, wanting to claw their eyes out for themselves? That would most likely not work for anybody Chunin and higher. Still, food for thought. But later. What? I didn't hear you, Ino insistently asked, narrowing her eyes at Hinata. Surely, she had a proper reason to risk going blind. A kid told me that my Byakugan eyes were ugly, Hinata sulkily said, and Ino's brain almost froze as her eyes started to twitch from annoyance. That's it, she asked in disbelief, giving Hinata, or rather, her clone who could actually see it, an intense what the hell. Are you fucking crazy look? Wait. Really? That's it. But what if Ren thinks the same? Both Hinata and her clone said at the same time as they both cutely pouted while still focusing on the ongoing surgery. He doesn't, Ino erupted. He does, Hinata said firmly, without raising her voice into a yell. How would you know? Ino exclaimed. I can see it with my eyes. The clone Hinata deadpanned. Ino had nothing to say to that. Her mouth opened, but only a short left it before she closed it and leaned back on the chair. Really, what was she supposed to say to that? Silence spread through the room for a few seconds, only interrupted by wet crunchy noises as the clone, no. Ino decided she was not going to think about what the clone was doing. She looked away as the clone pulled out a senbon from her pouch and neared Hinata's eye socket with it. Ino shivered. You don't have to change yourself because of him. You know he likes you. She faintly spoke, maybe even more than me. She muttered under her nose in displeasure but quickly got back on track. The look of active Byakugan is just freaky. She briefly glanced at the clone and the veins around its eyes. That's normal. This isn't required, Hinata. Hinata obediently listened to Ino's lecture, but when it was obvious that the blonde girl was done with the sermon, she huffed in amusement, only to get smacked on the shoulder by her scowling clone with a hiss of, "Stay still." Hinata gave her an apologetic smile before speaking to Ino again. Right. That's rich coming from you, miss. I no longer wear my hair in a ponytail because Ren prefers it unbound. She would have rolled her eyes if she had them. That's not the same, and you know it, isn't it, Hinata? Ino whined. Did the pig-headed bitch really have to be so difficult? She knew that the medical ninjas were nutjobs. She had heard her father say it many times. They were the craziest bunch in the village. But now she had witnessed it, and for the first time, she understood her father's complaints. he wasn't overstating it. If anything, he was downplaying their craziness. Hinata sighed. Don't worry, Ino. I have everything under control. I'll be done in a second. Realizing that Hinata was the expert here, Ino unhappily nodded before changing the topic. How does it even work? This surgery, clearly, conversing was not a hindrance to the surgery, or Hinata would have told her to shut up already. So, Ino didn't intend to just observe in silence. It's just adjusting my chakra pathways around my eyes, Hinata said, as if she was describing something simple like 1 + 1 to a particularly dumb kid. Her clone distractedly continued, I am not changing the eyes themselves. The reason why the veins bulge is that the natural pathways can't handle the chakra flow pressure, so I am toughening them up. Training helps with that, the original Hinata admitted, but no matter how much a Hyuga trains, the pathways are not built in a way to withstand the technique. There will always be bulging veins. I don't like that, so I decided my pathways need some hands-on touch-up. Hearing them, Ino couldn't help but give them a weirded-out expression. Just how good are you at the medical ninjutsu, really? I doubt doing this is simple. If it was, every Hyuga would go for it. The Akugan eyes without the veins? Wouldn't that be a game-changer? Ino could already see it. The villages would start executing blind people with white eyes in fear of them being Hyuga spies. But Hinata's clone only scoffed, as if any self-respecting Hyuga would let a medical ninja touch their precious eyes. The original Hinata hummed, but yeah, I might lack experience, but I am reasonably sure I could compete with some of the best in Konoha, but only because I am cheating. I can actually see what I am doing to my body in extreme detail. Seriously, since the original had to stay still, the clone Hinata shrugged in her stead. You have your elemental ninjutsu, and we have my medical ninjutsu. Now, could you finally shut up? I don't want to mess this next part up, Hinata asked, not angrily but in a plain matter-of-fact tone that told Ino that the blunnet needed to focus right now. 5 more minutes passed in silence as Ino watched Hinata's clone butcher the shit out of the original's eye sockets before inserting her eyes back into their place and haphazardly pulling the senbon out of Hinata's temple before healing the damage. When it was finally over, Ino was pale white, and Hinata stood up with a refreshed smile on her face that slowly turned into a smug one full of pride while her eyes roamed the room with wonder. Ino blinked as a realization hit her. Wait, is your Byakugan? Hinata looked at Ino, no veins bulging around her eyes. Active. Yes. And my eyes no longer feel as if something was squeezing them. She happily nodded. It only takes around a quarter of the chakra it did previously. That's really good. I didn't expect such a big improvement. She felt so overjoyed that she couldn't help but to express it. She took her clone into an embrace, lifted her up from the floor, and spun around in sheer joy as the clone let out a girlish shriek before they both started heartily laughing as they collapsed on the ground while still hugging. It was a surreal sight for Ino, how easily Hinata could switch from mad doctor to innocent girl. Sure, every ninja had their mental issues. She didn't feel much about killing, for example, but she thought Hinata's mental hang-up would be something innocuous like dressing up puppies in sweaters or taking in stray cats. Not self-surgery that even the maddest medical ninjas would not have the balls to attempt. Where did they go wrong with the girl? Chapter 69, ch 69, Blonde Cheating Ol. At the last moment, Ren unsealed a red blanket, and holding it with both hands, he sidestepped Ino, who charged at him, causing her to ram into it headfirst and get entangled in it. She let out a frustrated yell as she tried to tear it away from her face, giving Ren enough time to playfully spank her rear, making her jump slightly with a surprised yelp. Ren jumped away from Ino, letting out a jovial laugh as a bucket appeared in his hands, and he crouched, getting into position. Ino growled and finally managed to get rid of the blanket covering her face. With a snarl, she abruptly turned toward Ren, fully prepared to rip him a new asshole. Aura, only to have her temper forcefully cooled down as ice-cold water from the bucket splashed against her face, drenching her from head to toe and making her shiver. Ino stopped in her tracks from the sheer surprise, spurting a stream of water from her mouth. But she recollected herself relatively quickly, and her eyes narrowed with fury. Gnashing her teeth, she gripped her sword tightly and indignantly yelled, Ren, I am going to kill you. And then, with a puff, she got a face and mouth full of feathers. Ren watched in astonishment as the blonde girl fell on her knees and hands before starting to heave out the white feathers she involuntarily inhaled. His timing was impeccable. Even he had a hard time believing it. Incapacitation by feathers, baby. Hinata just watched from the sidelines with eyes full of pity for Ino while training her lightning nature exercises. The girls called it bullying, but Ren insisted it was a healthy dose of big head growth prevention. It was necessary, too. Less so for Hinata. Despite becoming a bit aloof, she was still a very humble cinnamon roll and didn't like to brag. Ino, however, was an entirely different matter. Ren knew that her prowess had already inflated her head. Deep down, she thought herself superior to her peers. And while she wasn't wrong, it was Ren's responsibility to show her she was not all that special just yet. He took that massive burden upon himself quite eagerly. Ren patiently waited like a proper gentleman until Ino coughed out all the feathers. He let her take a short breather before she prepared for the continuation of the battle. He expected her to be angry, but contrary to his expectations, Ino calmly looked at him, her eyes hooded and intense as she said with an utmost certainty, gazing him directly in the eyes and conveying her determination. I am going to win this. Smirking for a second, Ren utilized the transformation technique. Yosh! Show me your flames of youth burn brightly, young Ino. He turned his hair into an imitation of Guy's hairstyle and gave Ino a white toothy smile, even adding the shining white sparkle effect as he encouraged his precious pupil with a thumbs-up gesture. Watching Ino's horrified stare was a delight worthy of embracing his inner Guyness. At that moment, he knew, he had scored some emotional damage. Scrunching her eyebrows in disgust, Ino huffed and narrowed her eyes at Ren, getting ready to charge at him. Ren smiled and started to wonder what to nail her with next. An egg to the face, perhaps? Or maybe a plain old paint bomb? Fuchsia sounded good. What about putting glue into her hair? That should wake the dragon. Choices, choices. Ino scowled and charged. Ren prepared to counterattack. And suddenly, nothing. Ren's mind blanked out. He instantly snapped out of it as fast as possible, but Ino had already put her hand on his chest by that point, showing the widest and smuggest grin of all as she was barely refraining from squealing in glee while her fingers coiled around Ren's shirt. Ren blinked in bewilderment, looking at her hand. Wait, what? His mind was reeling from what had happened, trying to understand it as he jumped back on instinct, Ino letting go of his shirt in time so as not to stumble because of her grip. Yes, I did it. Yahoo! Victory! Ino shouted loudly, throwing her hands up in jubilant celebration before she started to jump up and down excitedly while still sporting her grin. How? Hinata exclaimed from the sidelines, her exercises forgotten. She had a hard time believing the bimbo had actually won. Because they were not nearly on their teacher's level, they agreed that taping him on the chest counted as a win. But so far, neither of them managed to do it. Opening his mouth, Ren stared at Ino in disbelief before promptly closing it without saying anything. For 10 seconds, he just stared. Enough time for Ino to calm down and start feeling unsettled due to his silent non-reaction. But then Ren just grinned at her and suddenly appeared in front of her, ruffling her hair, much to her vehemently protesting annoyance. Alas, Ren decided to take a small revenge by ruffling the heck out of her, so he didn't let her run away. I am so proud of you, he told the blonde girl as she gave him a mighty pout that could fell even the most hardened shinobi, making him laugh while her pout turned into a shy but happy smile. To be honest, in a real fight, Ren would have had a clone waiting nearby who would pull him away from danger at the last moment. He tried to imitate Orochimaru's style a little bit with it, but he wasn't going to tell that to Ino. She deserved her win and the feeling of accomplishment born out of it. I had a new idea, you see. As Ren pulled his hand away from her head, Ino started to exuberantly explain without Ren even needing to ask. He exasperatedly chucked and decided to listen to her bragging. Whatever she had done to get him was interesting. It wasn't genjutsu, that much Ren was certain of. Yet, somehow, the girl disabled his senses. Just for a moment. But in ninja battles, a moment is all it takes. We use clones so much, Ino continued, and we always provide our yin chakra. So, I wondered if I could make a clone made out of pure yin chakra, but that was impossible because the yang chakra makes the actual physical vessel. So, I tried, and failed, but then it came to me. My enemy can be the vessel. My yin clones are spiritual in nature, kind of like my clan jutsu. They form in the enemy's mind. Ino finally took a deep breath and slightly calmed down before averting her head with a small blush while clasping her hands together behind her back as she admitted, well, they are not that effective yet. I can't keep them in existence for more than 2 seconds. It is a work in progress. The more she talked, the more astonished Ren became, and he noticed that even Hinata was listening to Ino with rapt attention. Ino was clearly unaware, but she had once again done something impossible. The girl had discovered a new way of affecting ninjas' senses. One they haven't trained to resist. One they wouldn't know how to train to resist anytime soon. Yes. Ren eyed Ino's hair while only half listening to her babbling. It must be the blonde hair. It's a sign of a cheater. Naturally, he ignored the fact that he was blonde, too. More importantly, didn't I tell you to not blatantly experiment with new, possibly mentally damaging jutsu on your fellow academy students? Ren asked Ino with a raised eyebrow, making her tirade stop in its tracks as the girl now looked at him like a deer caught in headlights. But she had the audacity to whine in protest, and while knowing he should scold her so much she would feel shame until her graduation, Ren couldn't help the small, amused smile that spread on his lips. He fondly sighed. We will experiment with it here. Naruto is dumb enough without you playing Jenga with his mind. It was obvious that Ino didn't like that, but she eventually relented and let out an unhappy, alright. Chuckling, Ren spread his arms in an inviting manner. Come here. And Ino didn't hesitate even a second before she grinned and jumped into his embrace, her lips instantly pressing on his with demanding fervor as her arms snaked around his neck. Watching Ino and Ren make out, Hinata good-naturedly rolled her eyes and returned to her lightning release exercises. She would have to step up her game. The blonde bimbo was cheating far too well. Chapter 70, ch 70. A stalker? Hinata walked through the village, going to Ren's training after the academy classes ended. Surprisingly, she had a stalker today, so she had to walk around, ducking into side alleys, suddenly breaking into a run, even jumping onto the rooftops to change the streets abruptly. But her stalker was frustratingly good at tailing her. At first, she found it amusing, but after an hour, she was starting to get annoyed almost to the point of visibly snarling. She was already late to her training. She was half considering to just gentle fist the shit out of her stalker until he falls unconscious. The only thing stopping her hand was the fact it wouldn't be so easy. She would have needed to get serious and show her capabilities in public, which could blow the weakness act with her clan. It was not worth it. So, Hinata decided to try diplomacy first. She ducked into another side alley, but after a few steps, she abruptly turned on her heel, crossed her hands under her chest, and greeted the boy who had run into the side alley just a few seconds later with an unamused glare. It made him freeze in his tracks with a oh shit look on his face, and Hinata's anger slightly eased as she inwardly giggled. "Why are you following me, Uchiha-san?" She tried to keep her voice flat, but her inner amusement seeped out. She was still simmering with anger, but fortunately for the boy, she disliked violence. And Sage, how she wanted to smack him upside the head right now. They stared at each other in silence, Suzuki showing a complicated and broody expression while Hinata waited for his answer with a raised eyebrow. "You are acting like Naruto. I'd expect stalking from him. He does it regularly when he wants to prank somebody," Hinata casually added. She was no Ino at screwing with people's minds, but even a deaf and half-blind child would know that comparing Suzuki to Naruto was going to rile him up after going to the same class as them for several years. Suzuki's cheeks gained a pink dusting from embarrassment as he realized that yes, Hinata's insinuation was not all that incorrect. He was stalking her. For a moment, he gave Hinata a butthurt glare, but then he averted his eyes, and Hinata giggled, making him duck his head further from the sheer shame. Honestly, he didn't understand half of the feelings that suddenly assaulted him, and it was as confusing as it was frustrating. "As if I'd act like the loser," Suzuki grumpily muttered under his nose, trying to get Hinata to focus on something other than his stalking. He had vandalized yet another store yesterday. He was glad to notice it worked. The girl visibly winced. Hearing him, Hinata let out an exasperated sigh. Naruto's relationship with Karen did him a whole lot of good. He stopped being the dead last, and his taijutsu improved by leaps and bounds. He even stopped pranking people so much, but not even Karen could get him to stop completely. Before Hinata had met Ren, she thought that Naruto's pranking was justified, that he was brave for fighting back in a relatively harmless way against people who disliked him and treated him badly. She was a very naive girl back then. Ren had explained to her the perspective of shopkeepers. He told her to imagine being the owner of a clothing store and having your entire inventory, worth tens if not hundreds of thousands of ryo, ruined by an orange paint bomb because one of your shop attendants acted rude toward Naruto. And while the Hokage did offer them reimbursement when they complained, it was done with great reluctance and exasperation. Plus, the Hokage was a ninja. He would have his Umbu do a short investigation, find out why Naruto acted out, and then pay the shop owner only 50% worth of the damages because technically, the prank was provoked by someone working in the shop. The Hokage was not above wiggling out of problems like this, and the shop owners would usually, with a heavy heart, accept the offered 50% because it was better than nothing. Of course, it was practically a "here is some money, stop complaining and shut up already" kind of deal. They had a good reason to fear Naruto's presence in their shops. They knew that some of their rivals had gone bankrupt because of him, so they watched him like hawks to the point where they seemed hostile and made him feel uncomfortable when shopping with their attitude, because he was a very disliked menace among the business owners. Sadly, that just perpetuated the cycle. Naruto sometimes took that attitude personally and lashed out with another prank. Hinata even knew that Ren had tried to explain this to the boy 3 separate times when he occasionally met him at Ichiraku, but it was just not to be. Naruto always slipped back into pranking, eventually. This wasn't a situation where Naruto was the victim. Both parties were guilty and deserved to be kicked in the butt for it. Shaking her head in exasperation, Hinata refocused on Suzuki after giving Naruto's situation a second of thought. She was aware that the Uchiha was trying to divert her attention. He succeeded. But because of her training, her mind worked much faster than before. So, unfortunately for him, she was only distracted for a second or two. "That still doesn't answer why you are stalking me, though," Hinata pointed out before comically widening her eyes with a loud gasp. "Don't tell me." She put her hand in front of her mouth to portray shock and gave Suzuki the best innocent look she was capable of making. "Are you perhaps trying to find where Ino lives because you fell in love with her and want to steal her used underwear?" The boy gave her the flattest look she had ever seen in her life. It almost made her being late to the training worth it. Almost. "No." Suzuki deadpanned with a disgusted frown. "You do realize she is only flirting with you to be annoying, right?" Hinata's lips twitched into a half smirk before falling back into a small smile. That took the Uchiha by surprise. "What?" he asked as his eyebrows furrowed and his body language became much less confident. Hinata only shrugged. If you flirted back, she wouldn't get her enjoyment out of your reaction, and she would quickly lose interest. She might bat her eyelashes at you and say she wants your babies, Uchiha, but the bimbo is usually full of shit. She told him exasperatedly. "She will never put out for you. She wants." The girl trailed off as she realized that she got too into ranting about Ino and fucked up. Telling him about their teacher was not something she wanted to do, but she had already started her sentence, and Suzuki was now looking at her with curiosity. Inwardly whining at her blunder, she let out a small sigh and continued, "I mean, she already has her eyes on somebody else." She tried to play it off, but it was obvious that the Uchiha boy was now very interested. She liked him better when he was a broody little antisocial sissy. Slowly nodding his head at the unexpected information that destroyed quite a few of his preconceived notions, Suzuki stored it in his mind for later and finally decided to get to the point of why he was stalky-er, trying to catch up with his classmate. "I talked to Niji Hayaga" he started, and Hinata groaned. "Of course you did," she mumbled. "And he said you were not trained by the clan." Suzuki said with an overly serious expression, "I want to know who is teaching you." Hinata silently considered his words, her expression becoming blank. She knew this was going to happen one day. She hoped she could gaslight Suzuki into thinking she was trained by her clan, but apparently, her marvelous cousin screwed that option up for her. He was another thing that Ren put into perspective for her. Family Niji might be, and deep down she still loved him as a brother, but if Suzuki was the sissy little bitch of their class, then Niji was the sissy little bitch number 2, free trial edition. At least Suzuki had a proper reason to act out. She felt very bad for her uncle's fate, but Ren literally beat her pity for Niji out of her. The little bitch hated her for being unable to resist a jonin when she was a 5-year-old kid. A jonin who managed to infiltrate the very heart of the Hyuga compound. It was utterly foolish. Huffing in annoyance, Hinata chewed on her lower lip for a moment before deciding that she didn't want to deal with this situation. You know what? Fine. Come, I will introduce you to my teacher. The rest is on you. She decided to throw this problem at Ren. She might love him to death, but this and that were two very different things. What do you think happens next? Drop your theories in the comments on Infinite Novel.